Welcome. We'll call our June 8th continuation meeting to order. Again, I'd like to welcome all of you here. And it's great tonight to get to see a lot of very familiar faces that are all duly concerned with Macon County and Macon County government. As all of y'all know, the gist of tonight's meeting has to do with budget and budget discussions. Odds are very good. I've been on this board long enough to know that odds are very good that those departments that were happy with county manager's budget proposal, or they thought they were probably getting too much money, are probably not here tonight. But those that aren't are here to speak with us and to help this board understand what's going on. Taxes and budget is, in my opinion, the most important thing that this board is elected to do, is to oversee our county tax dollars. It's something that, again, we take very seriously. If you look back through history, our nation's history, boy, today was an interesting day in our government, wasn't it? But anyway, if you look back through our nation's history, there's probably nothing that's caused more strife, wars, and issues than the term taxes and budgets. And so with that being said, I know we're going to have some very serious discussions tonight, so I expect everyone in this room to work through what I call civil discourse, which in simpler terms just means let's just have good, respectful, honest conversations about where we're headed tonight. With that being said, is there any additions to the agenda? I have one item I'd like to add. Anybody else? I'd like to add, maybe, let's add it as item number, we'll just add it under number 4 before A, will be Health Department. Concern that the Health Department had with possible addition to the budget.
Mr. Chair, I would like to add one item. I don't know where you want to place it, but I talked to Mr. Manager about it in regards to Southwestern Community College current budget year.
Okay.
Potentially a small shortfall, potential.
Okay.
We worked through it today. He's going to be meeting with Dr. Thomas tomorrow or Monday. This role, Dr. Thomas is going to meet with him.
Okay.
And we're going to look at the 17-18 budget, or not we, but he will look at the 17-18 budget and the shortfall you're talking about.
Okay.
That's been set up.
Okay. You think we need to not have that on the agenda tonight?
Right.
Okay.
They need to have their conversation.
Okay.
Is there anything else? Do y'all want to speak tonight? Libraries? Okay. We'll add libraries as 4B. Is there anything else? I don't think we have a public comment period. Is there anyone else that's not on our agenda? Fire Department, Board of Education, Health Department, libraries. Richard, I think you're already on our agenda. Good. Anybody else that I'm missing? Anything else from commissioners? Well, with that being said, we'll move on to item number 2. I guess do we need an approval, Sheriff? Mr. Chester, need an approval for the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda is amended, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Good. Budget discussion regarding Macon County schools. Come on up, Dr. Baldwin. I think this board, we have received our county manager's proposal. And I think we're all familiar and understand it very well. We are familiar with what your initial budget was, and I understand there's been some discussions going on with the liaisons. With that being said, I think there's still some, it sounds like some discontent maybe of where we need to go with that, and so let's have those discussions and see
Okay.
where we need to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome all y'all. So,
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here before you tonight. Just some information for you tonight to consider as you discuss the county manager's proposed budget. I'd like to start with some information about the comparison of Macon County Schools budget with other budgets. First, beginning with the Macon County budget compared to the two budgets from 2008-9 through 2017. You can see the Macon County budget is on the right-hand side, and the Macon County Schools budget is on the right-hand side, and the Macon County budget is on the left-hand side. This information, the bulk of the information I collected from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners website, budget and tax survey data. And then the far right column, local employees, I pulled that off of the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction website, statistical profile, local personnel. Couple of things just to point out. You'll notice that the total budget, $13,435,000 in 08-09, has gone down to $11,758,651. And that includes debt service and other items like that. And I don't know if Derek or Lori want to comment on that, because there's items in there that I don't really have a whole lot of knowledge about. But
in that 11.9 number, I'll have to
the
see
total
where the number came from. Lori and I were putting some numbers together today, and for the FY 17-18 budget, and looking back at FY 16-17, and it just depends on which numbers you use. That number could either be 11.9 or 12.4. I think we had a number that was 12.3. It just depends on what's included in that total.
sure. And I certainly want to make that clear. Again, this came off of the North Carolina County Commissioners website, and I don't know how that data is collected. I know that we have some discrepancies sometimes with the data that NCDPI has, but you know, for comparison's sake, this is what we have. I've noticed, or I noted an asterisk on year 13-14, local employees of 139. That was a couple of items about that particular data. That's the same number of local employees that we had in 2006. And at that time, we were going through the finishing up the stimulus money that we had. So that does have an impact on that high number of locally paid employees at that time. Now, if you go down to 16-17, you'll notice that we only have 114 now, and that's a change of 25 employees. And obviously that a change of that number of employees when the operational budget is staying pretty much the same allows you to increase your fund balance. And one point about that is back in 13-14, we had a very minimal fund balance and a change in fund balance for that fiscal year of about $700,000 in the negative. So we were in a position where our auditors were being pretty stern with us and telling us that we needed to build a fund balance. I know that there's some questions about where the fund balance came from and how it was generated. That number, the change in local employees, is the bulk of the reason for that increase in fund balance. You've noticed that from 2008 to 2017, the total budget changed by about 12% in the negative. This is another way to, go ahead.
One thing to make it, the full-time, those employees, that 444 would be full-time equivalent. If you look at our full-time employees, that's including part-time employees as well. If you look at our full-time employees, that's approximately 380. And I know if you had looked at our audits to get these number of employees, our past audits, they do full-time equivalents, and which includes part-time employees as well.
Has there been
The NCACC survey too, we all also report full-time equivalents, so.
So is that, what would be the difference on those reports?
Well, it's plus, here it's at 444 minus 385. You're gonna
Has
be
there-
looking at a
60
difference of about 60 employees.
people.
Has there been a change in the way that it was reported, or is that?
I can't attest for
They're reporting
09.
full-time equivalent, which
I know-
includes
Would-
part-time.
Okay.
I don't know what they did in 09, but 14
Right.
through 17 is full-time equivalents.
Right, and I understand that happens to us with DPI all the time.
Right.
Does that look about right with the budgets?
Mhm.
Just eyeballing it, yeah. Looks about
Another way to look at it is, of course, looking at current expense. And you'll notice that in 14-15, our current expense budget was 7,338. 15-16, it was 7,338. And also in 13-14, it was 7,338 million. In 16-17, that changed to 7,138,330. And we were instructed to use fund balance at that time to keep our operating budget at 7,338. The supplement has changed over the years. And I also need to point out in 17-18, that $479,000, that's changed already with what's been proposed by the Senate and the House. Obviously, the Senate's budget has proposed or has been changed from the budget that we were working off at that time. If the Senate budget is approved, or if the compromise budget is closer to the Senate's budget, that number may actually go up. If the compromise is closer to the House budget, it will go down. Capital outlay for this year is $600,000. Solid waste fees projected at $80,000. And now I had to, off that debt service, what was reported by to the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, it's the total debt service, but you back out that school reserve fund and the lottery fund. I'm thinking that's close.
Yeah, that's just the general fund piece, right?
So an overall budget of 9.6 compared to an over budget of 9.616 in 14-15. So not a whole lot of change there. This is a comparison of the same information from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners website for, I think, what's been described in the past as our sister counties in Western North Carolina. You'll see that the Macon County, of the 4 counties, has the largest ADM. And there's a pretty significant difference in the total budgets and also the operating budgets. There's a little difference in the way that the operating budgets are reported for the 4 counties, primarily being Macon County's teacher supplement is not included in the operational budget, whereas in Transylvania and Watauga County, it is included in the operational budget. I'm not sure what Watauga County's teacher supplement is, but in Transylvania County, it's 9.5%, and that's not for teachers, that's for all employees, is my understanding. And that's included in the operational budget, and that's obviously a huge chunk of the operational budget. Other big items in both Transylvania and Watauga's budgets are for technology. The millage rate is also included in here, as is fund balance for fiscal year 15-16 for the 4 counties. I also decided to include a comparison of some of the performance indicators that you can also, this can be found on North Carolina Department of Public Instruction's website under school accountability. One caveat to this is the ACT scores. In Macon County, only about 82.9% of the students participated in the ACT, compared to varying percentages across the other 4 counties or other 3 counties. Transylvania County did test 100% of their students, so you have to take that into account when you're comparing those scores. Work Keys is a test that's given to our students, and it's for vocational type courses. You can see that we compare favorably in all of those areas despite considerable difference in the budgets. And I would just like to emphasize the fact that I think that I know that there's only one reason for us to be able to compete the way that we are with these other counties, considering the difference in the operational budget, and that's because of our teachers and our principals. They care about Macon County, they care about our students, and they work hard to see that our students achieve compared to those across the state.
Kudos.
Thank you, and I'm sure they'll appreciate that. This was our draft budget that we submitted, and it 2 columns, far left column is our request. The far right column would be if the proposed budget is approved. And this was based on the best information that we had at the time of the draft budget. And it has since changed, and I'll go through some of those changes. We budgeted $1.2 million of fund balance, and that being, if everything went for the positive for us, in other words, we didn't have to spend $310,000 on the 6 positions that would be needed to address the class size mandate. If we received the federal funding for Title II, and we didn't have to move some media coordinators around, and we did not hire a digital learning specialist, and we didn't have to move 3 teachers to local, and it doesn't look like we're going to have to move the 3 teachers to local, only about 1.5 at this point. The minimum fund balance appropriated under these 2 budgets would be $483,000 or $683,000, roughly. Now, since the draft budget was submitted, the Senate budget has been proposed, as has the House budget. If the Senate's budget is passed, our minimum fund balance appropriated will increase to $873,000. I know that that is a little bit of a surprise, or it's a little bit confusing because of the fact that the class size mandate was taken out of the Senate budget, but what was included in the Senate budget was several waivers that limited our flexibility in moving money around. And that resulting rigidity is shown in the change in fund balance appropriated. If the Senate budget's passed, we'll have to appropriate somewhere between $873,000 and $1.3 million of our fund balance. If our budget is kept at 7,338, if it's reduced to 7,138, we'll have to appropriate $1,073,000. The House budget is much more favorable. If the House budget is passed, at our request, we'll have to fund $199,000 out of fund balance, and if the manager's proposal is approved, we'll have to appropriate almost $400,000. Now, obviously, there'll be a compromise between the House and Senate, so it's going to be somewhere between a requirement of us appropriating almost $200,000 and possibly $1.3 million. So it's somewhere in that neighborhood. I know that when we've had our discussions in the past, it's come up that that the county's responsibility is bricks and mortar, and the state's responsibility is operation expenses. And I'll just point out that an article that's found on the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners website, County Funding of Public Schools, under the heading County Funding of Public Schools. The title of the article is Statement by the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners to the Committee for the Study of Public Finance. Counties have been supplementing the state's appropriation to current expense since 1933. In 1958, that amount of appropriation or amount of supplementation had gone up to about 17% of the school system's total operational budget. In other words, the county funded at least 17%. Counties across North Carolina funded 17% of school systems' operational budgets at that time. In 2016, that has increased, but not, I don't think, as much as you would think since 1958. It's only gone up from 17% to 21.4%. I don't dispute the fact that the state should be funding the full amount of operational expenditures, but the fact is most counties across the state, including our own, would say that they are not. Today, in Macon County funds about 16.9% of the overall school system's operational expenditures. So I say all that in hopes that you will consider maintaining our operational budget at $7,338,000. $7,338,330. That's our operational budget request. Our capital outlay budget request, you should have seen this spreadsheet you have. Did they have this with them, Derek? Do you have any questions about the capital outlay budget request? I know that the county manager has recommended an appropriation of $600,000 in capital outlay.
How are y'all with that, Chris?
What's that?
How are y'all with that number?
Well, obviously, it's more than we had last year. and we certainly appreciate that increase.
But 50% of that's technology too, Mr. Ball,
Okay.
so that needs to be said. Because half of that goes to strictly this technology.
Are you gonna say anything about South Macon elementary capacity?
At this point, the capital outlay request reflected 6 classrooms along with the cafeteria expansion of approximately $1.6 million. You know, right now, South Macon is at capacity. When I say capacity, I mean we're using media center, we're using storage rooms and things like that for instructional purposes. If the enrollment continues to increase next year, we're going to be in some hot water at the beginning of school year 18-19.
You gonna be okay on 17-18 for the?
Right now, it looks like we will be at capacity. And again, when I say at capacity, I mean slightly above capacity. We'll be able to operate, we believe so at this point, but if we have an enrollment increase over the summer, we maybe have to move some folks around.
In our conversation the other day with the liaison, Mr. Beal and I, we talked about doing something up front immediately. Start doing some planning on that. We got a picture on that yet?
I think what we're referring to, board, is, Mr. Chairman, is we'll bring this before the board later on when the manager and we have a chance to sit down and talk, but is to go ahead and do the preliminaries for an expansion at South Macon. Lori and I and Mr. Shields were talking, and the manager, that might be a good interest rate period coming up to go ahead and have the plans prepared, get everything ready for the expansion. If it seems imminent that there's going to have to be an expansion, as it certainly appears so, Mr. Superintendent, so is to go ahead and prepare and have at least, as we know that takes a good chunk of time, so go ahead and at least have the plans ready, be shovel ready. We've heard that expression before.
Yeah, it sounds like this might even come, it might be a more pressing need than even waiting on our capital improvement plan.
Yeah.
Right.
So we would encourage that process as we move along, and we can have that discussion further along, not tonight, but and I think the school board would encourage that also. The impression we've got from the liaison committee, of course, the school board would have to take the first step, and we'd move it from there.
And maybe something we can take up in our facilities review committee, look at that too. But I think if we don't start putting something together, we're gonna end up in a dire emergency situation.
What would the timeline look like at this point?
Well, that would be up to the board, of course, Mr. Superintendent, but as Mr. Breedlove mentioned, there's some other things we probably want to do in conjunction with that at the middle grade. And some of these, it don't seem right, like Mr. Breedlove was talking about what the age of some of these schools are getting. It seemed like it shouldn't be but 10 years old, but they're 40 years old. So there's some renovation work that we would probably tie into that same thing that the review committee will bring back before this board in conjunction with the school board, and we'd lump that all together. But they are
Let's get it rolling, 'cause we're gonna be.
Yeah, they are. We don't want to get behind like some of us sitting here have seen us get behind before. There's no reason to do that now. So, but the timeline with what we've talked about, Mr. Superintendent, it's going to be pretty quick. I would hope.
Chris, I won't hold it to you, but how big of an expansion are we potentially looking at? How many rooms?
Well, what we put in the capital outlay request was 6 classrooms. And that's roughly, that gives us a 2 classroom cushion based on what we have at the end of the year this year. Obviously, that may change August the 28th.
And if there's ever been a school that was prepared for an expansion, I mean, you know, we prepared for those in the new schools that we did, for as much space as we had. South Macon is certainly one of those, so I'm certain that discussion would proceed as this board sees fit, and your board too, Mr. Superintendent. And I would hope it moved pretty quickly, as me and Mr. Shields have discussed.
Any other questions?
Not right now. I think it'll come up, we'll have more discussions.
If, just a few comments, and, you know, at this time of year, it seems like, you know, every year, the uncertainty that accompanies the passage of the state budget leaves us kind of in a state of limbo with respect to the local budget, because of course, till that state budget is passed, we don't know the impact that'll have on a local level. But you did have a slide up with that showed, I think it went back to 14, 15, and the county allocations. That was, I think it was a few, right there. In 14, and you know, I say that to say that this is not, you know, this is not something new at this budget discussion that we're not facing every year with the state budget. For instance, in fiscal year 14-15, the school system originally requested $7.8 million in operating funds. The budget allocation, as it shows on this chart here, was $7.3 million. As that fiscal year went along, the fund balance during that fiscal year increased by $1.05 million. And again, remember, at budget discussions, we were looking at a $7.8 million budget request when our funding allocation was $500,000 at $7.3 million, short of that requested $7.8 million. And as you had indicated last year in the slide, of that increase of $1 million in 14-15 to the fund balance, $706,000 of that increase was due to recurring revenue, as it was stated in that slide. And again in 15-16, moving forward again, once again, with the uncertainty that accompanies the passage of the state budget and the effect it has here on our local discussions, again, $7.8 million was requested, while the county appropriation was $7.3 million. During the fiscal year 15-16, as the year went on and the year ended, again, in that fiscal year, there was a $567,420 increase to fund balance, which brought the overall fund balance level at the end of 15-16 to $2 million. That was an increase, of course, in 13-14. I think it was the fund balance was right around $300,000. So when you look at that, 279. When you look at that 13-14 comparison, and then look at what had happened up until 15-16, it's about a 1.6 million or $427 increase, or 427% increase from 13-14. And at that time, in 15-16, the ADM was right at 44.75, and there was 26.72 teachers locally paid. Moving into 16-17 this year, as you alluded to, the county had recommended 7.1, and again, looking at the trends that had occurred from 14-15 and 15-16 with the $7.3 million allocation, and the ability through 14-15 and 15-16 to continue increasing that fund balance by 427%, or $1.6 million, 706,000 of which was due to recurring revenue, and 360 of that, I think, was the impact of teachers' assistants and drivers' education, which was in the original request. So when looking at those trends going into 16-17, and that recommendation of 7.1 million, we're saying we're going to appropriate 7.1 million, and the shortfall, that 200,000, could be made up, as you said, using the fund balance, which is what we suggested, up to $200,000. And again, the logic of that is the reoccurring revenue from the state would be used to cover those expenditures in the operating budget, and what was previously being covered with local when the state budget was received could be transferred elsewhere, moved around in the budget. During fiscal year 16-17, we also contributed, in addition to that 7.1, another $31,800 to complete the Highlands roof, and made up the teacher supplements, as you alluded to.
And we appreciate that.
By $23,000. Yes, and I'm just, to give a history, that again, in fiscal year 17-18, we recommended the funding level of 7.1 million. And at the end of 16-17, as we head into 17-18, the school system, of course, the locally paid teachers is up from 15-16, from 26 to 30 on those figures that you had provided. And at the ADM, we saw in 16-17 decline by about 40 from fiscal year 15-16. So in the coming fiscal year, the school system had requested $7.3 million, and again, this is just recapping kind of where we're coming from the county standpoint, or at least my standpoint in the recommended budget. The request was $7.3 million in operating expenses, and that assumed the House Bill 13, which was the compromise on the class size requirements. It assumed no compromise would be met, which would have then been upon the local government to about 6 teaching positions. I think we had talked $350,000. Again, this budget also assumed at $7.3 million, with the $1.2 million appropriated from fund balance, that Title II funding on the federal level would be completely eliminated, which would result in 2 teaching positions being lost. That would estimated about $104,000 that would have cost. And then just then you had said it's only looking like now 1.5 teachers to local, rather than the 3 that were assumed at the time of the proposed budget. Again, the resource facilitator was included in there. And at the time of the proposed budget, I think, again, it goes back to that uncertainty with the state budget, who at the time this budget was taking into account a 5% salary increase for teachers. And as we see negotiations continue, I think it was around 3.8%.
And
that we looked.
depending on which budget's passed, if the Senate's budget's passed, that increase won't impact our local budget.
Right, and
If
so
the
that-
House budget's passed, it will minimally affect our budget.
Right. So, with that being said, the question comes, and then when we're looking at budgeting, with the minimal impact that it could have, or no impact, $176,000 was included in that $7.3 million request, and it was tied to the projected 5% salary increase. And another thing that was included in the Senate budget and is coming in the House budget and is looking very optimistic is the small school funding that I know both of our representatives, Representative Corbett.
And that's a good point. Both of the Senate and House budgets that I've included here. If I may just interject real quick. You'll notice both budgets assume the passage of Senate Bill 15
Okay.
and the House
Right.
and the House companion bill.
And so that, at the time the proposed budget at $7.3 million was recommended, though, I don't think we were not expecting that at that
Well,
time.
and I agree, and that's one of the reasons that we requested a operational budget of 7.3 with that large appropriation of fund balance, because there's so much uncertainty at that
Right.
time. But it's
Right.
also a good indication of why we need a large fund balance, or what some people might consider to be a large fund balance. Our auditor would tell us that 1.5 million or 2 million is not quite enough. And I think if you notice those other schools, other school systems, their fund balances were comparable, if not larger than ours. So, and going back to your other point too, because I think it's a very important point, is looking at that fund balance, especially the net change in fund balance. When we were at $279,000, the net change in fund balance for that particular year was over $700,000. So when you're going down and you're at zero, you only have one option at that point, or you have 2 options. Your revenues increase, which we have no control over, or you cut your expenditures. And I showed you there where we did cut our expenditures pretty significantly. And the other thing you alluded to, if I might continue, is the reason for that request of 7.8 in school year 14-15. Had it not been for teacher assistants and driver's ed being projected to be cut, in the state budget, we probably wouldn't have requested 7.8 then, we would have requested 7.3.
Right.
Now, since you all didn't appropriate 7.8, which I understand you not appropriating 7.8 due to the uncertainties, we did have to make some precautionary measures and to cut additional positions to, in preparation for that possible cut. That particular year, the state didn't release their budget until October, at which time we could not hire teachers, folks back for those positions that we had cut to be able to pay for the teacher assistants and driver's ed.
And I think, that, again, we go back to the uncertainty, and I think that is a good point, because it's ever evolving from the first time we meet until the budget gets passed. And we've had some discussions about that, getting back to that small school funding bill, could have an impact of up to $500,000 to Macon County.
Not to our local budget though,
Right, but in teaching positions.
but that,
At the-
it won't impact our local budget by $500,000.
Right, not impact the local budget, but it would give $500,000.
It would give
to
6
teachers.
positions.
6 positions.
And that dollar amount assigned to that is one of those things that's highly difficult to estimate, because we're gonna put those positions on the PRC 001 allotment, and the state will pay those teaching positions regardless of their salary.
Right.
Some of those teachers may, if they're at the top of the salary scale, they may be earning $50,000 plus benefits. Whereas at the local level, we'll only pay for the beginning teachers, because that allows us to stretch that local dollar.
Right, and so, I say that to say that, we face these challenges each year, going back to 14-15. And depending on what happens at the state budget, we see positive impacts and we can see negative impacts. But I think the thing to take away from that is that we always work together. And the slides that you showed with our students' test scores, I'll echo what the chairman said. That is kudos to the teachers in this county
And students.
and the principals and the students' willingness to learn. Moving forward, I think I just want to be clear that this is a discussion that we have every year. Back to 14-15, the 7.1, the logic behind that 17-18 recommendation, and I feel like that I have to talk about it because it's my recommended budget. That's my recommendation is, with that 7.3, with all these things like the $176,000 in salaries for the salary increase that now we're learning could minimally or not at all impact the local budget, the $350,000 that would come to the school system as a result of the compromise on House Bill 13.
Now, we won't get any money for that
6
compromise.
teachers. There's the 6
That's
teaching
Senate Bill
positions.
15. We won't actually receive any of that money for the compromise of House Bill 13. We won't have to spend that
Right,
money.
and the budget request, when the $7.3 million budget request was submitted, and we've discussed it, those 6 positions were included in that as a result of a failure to compromise on that. But since that has been compromised, or since a compromise has been found, you take those 6 positions out. The K-12.
Well, now, that depends on the Senate's budget. In the
Right.
Senate's budget, with the loss of those waivers, that's going to actually increase our number of locally paid teachers by 8. 11? 11.
Right, but just as these things have came to fruition,
Well, I think that's the problem.
And are still coming to
You're
fruition.
touching on it. Nothing is to fruition at this point.
right, well, I guess I'm more on the expecting things to come to fruition, while you're on the other end saying that nothing will come to fruition, or it might be minimally come to fruition.
Well,
Just-
I've
But-
given you.
But I say that to say that this is not a discussion that we do not have every year. This year in the budget, at 7.1, we were also able to bring that teacher's supplement up to the $480,000, right around $479 as requested by the school system.
I think that we requested, was it 454 this time?
No.
And then 479 is for next year, is that right?
Yeah, 17-18.
Yeah.
The budget.
And it's probably not going to get to 479 unless the Senate's budget is approved.
That will be We'll be good. So during the same time period, though, and the local budget has, of course, went down, but at the same time, the capital outlay, we've increased capital outlay in fiscal year 13-14, it was at 100,000.
It was actually zero, I think,
Today
in
it's-
11,
it
12,
sits
and
at-
12, 13.
Yeah, and today it sits at 600,000. We've been able to accommodate, and again, that the supplements we saw continue to increase as a result of, I think since 2013, on average, and this is not making it, the average teacher pay, the 15.5% increase.
Well, but now that
To-
15.5% increase includes local supplements.
Right. So, but the supplements have risen as a result of the salary increases from the state, is what I'm trying to say, but.
Well, the average teacher pay in North Carolina, though, I think is now considered to be a little over $50,000 a year. But that factors in local supplements for the other counties in North Carolina, which of the 115, 105 of them have a larger local supplement than Macon County.
So, I guess moving forward, we'll
But you
continue-
mentioned a change in fund balance, and that being, I think, if I understood what you said, one of the reasons for the reduction of our operational budget. Am I right in assuming that that's what you were indicating?
Yes, because 306.
In fiscal year, the current fiscal year, our fund balance projected net change at this time is $702,000 in the negative. So we're looking at a fund balance going from 2 million to about 1.3, and the reason for that change is a loss of revenue of $200,000, which we had to cover out of our fund balance. Another loss of revenue of $91,994 in timber sales. That's been budgeted at around $150,000 a year, $175,000 a year, and this year we only received a check for $53,000. 58,000.
That was due to the federal government not reauthorizing that bill.
But I'm just trying to show that with this net change in fund balance, how volatile school systems' budgets are. We had to cover an $18,000 reduction in sales tax refund, a $12,000 reduction in E-rate, the movement of those 1.5 teachers to local, the unfunded bonuses that teachers were given by the state that we chose to cover out of fund balance this year. And that did not come out of our teacher supplement, that came out of our fund balance. An increase of $61,000 for pre-K. We added a pre-K classroom at South Macon with a teacher assistant. $105,000 for Medicaid. And then the other thing is, one of the reasons that our fund balance increased last year was due to the fact that we were the fiduciary agent for the STEM program in Western North Carolina. That went into our fund balance, and it inflated our fund balance artificially. We've now spent about $55,000. That's contributed to a net gain in our fund balance of $702,000 this year. So we're going to finish up this fiscal year at somewhere around 1.3, something like that. So when you consider a decline in fund balance this year for those reasons, I hope you'll take that into consideration when you consider cutting our operational budget.
Right, and it's just like the same thing that we considered from going in 16-17 from 15-16, when 360,000 of the change in fund balance was due to the teacher assistants and driver's ed funding going into fund balance.
Yeah, but
rather
none
than
of these
budget.
things are projections. These are
Right.
things that actually happened this year.
Mhm. Right.
Anybody want to give us a recap?
What the liaison committee, Mr. Chairman, as we met, it's not a disagreement between the county and the school board. You know, the state, we're paying 20% more operational costs because the state, and for a rural county, for our size, that's huge. That's one of the largest in the state. I mean, you compare it to Orange County, Wake County, what they pay, but for 20% for a county our size, and the superintendent will tell you, that's a large amount. We're the only county that pays a supplement this far west, period. And we're glad we can do that. We should pay
And we
more.
appreciate it.
But what leaving out of the equation here is you got the state involved, and the state's going to keep giving us more and more and more as long as we'll pay for it. And where's that gonna end, if it's ever gonna end?
Well, I think that's I apologize for interrupting. I think you're exactly right. And I think we had this discussion in 1958.
Yeah, and there's a huge chart, and we're gonna have that presentation, we're gonna come by and give that presentation here in this room, showing that, but it's getting, is worse or worse? It's not improving, it's certainly not improving any, and while yet, a lot of the money you see, if you look at the budgets, the charter schools, where they don't have to do nothing that the public schools has to do, if you're really interested in public schools, and what they have to, it's not an argument between the local school board and this county board. You've got the state involved, and that's where it really, the difference is $200,000 is what, is it whatever this board wants to do, but really and truly, what we better be looking at is down the road. As the superintendent says, if he could spend as little as $200,000 out of his fund balance, or as much as $700,000 out of his fund balance. So if that should happen, next year is where it could really get tough. So what I would encourage, regardless of what this board decides to do, Mr. Chairman, beginning when you figure out what the state's going to do, and we always have to wait, this never fails, September last year, end of September. And this is a biennium budget, by the way. This is a 2-year deal. So at the end of this budget, when the schools can figure out, when Ms. Cook can sit down and figure out what's really going to happen, I would encourage that begin on a quarterly basis at least, that between the county and the schools, that and the liaison committee, whatever, as far as the financials, that conversation needs to happen more often. So because we could easily next year see Mr. Ball could be sitting there looking at, instead of 7.3, he could be easily sitting there talking about 8.1. So if we can get in front of that somehow, and I don't have the answer now, nor does Chris. But so the $200,000 is not a moot point, but it's just a matter of how much the school board is going to spend their seed corn. So and we hope it's on the low end, but it's going to be somewhere in the middle. We hope. We want to maintain the, it's like Mr. Baldwin said in the meeting, if we want to maintain the education system we have in our county, and we do, it's going to come back to this board to determine that. He gave us that charge in there. It's going to be up to this board to determine what kind of school system we have. I don't hardly think that's fair, but that's just the way it is.
I regret that it's that way. I wish that the state did pick up more of that.
And I don't think that that's fair to this board, but that's just the way it is in this state. And we're all the way up to 46, 40, 45, 44 now.
And teacher pay,
We're really doing well, so.
per pupil expenditures.
So I mean, I don't know when enough's enough for the Macon County taxpayer, Mr. Chairman, but I think Mr. Shields can certainly speak to it. But the $200,000 difference in the budget right now, yes, that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of money in this budget. But overall, looking down the highway is what, after the state comes, what they want to have is what we better be looking at. Because this time next year, standing there, it could be real good, it could be not so good. So, but I think the school board has done with what they had. I think the county manager makes a great case for his budget. There's no doubt about that. And but the school board also, it's hard to do a budget when you don't know what you got.
Any other comments, Paul? Carl? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Well, just to follow up on one thing that Ronnie mentioned, and Ronnie and I talked about this previously. I think I don't think anybody will deny that moving forward, more of the financial responsibility is going to fall on the county. And I think that the more involved that the two groups can be with one another, working towards that common goal, I think it helps everybody be more
Well, and we
prepared.
certainly appreciate Mr. Shields being at all of our board meetings to hear the issues that we're dealing with.
And, from our liaison standpoint, I want to say thank you to both of you. I've worked on this school budget a little bit, and it's kind of reminds me of walking down the beach, and the water comes up and the sand shifts. That's the budget.
Yeah.
And when you turn around at about 500 feet, all the sand's different. So
You want to ask Angie what that budget looks like?
Angie won't disagree with that.
So,
Yeah, well, it's probably not
Angie
gonna be
won't
in
even go
Sandy
to the
Beach.
now because of that. So I think, thank you to y'all, and thank you to the school board. And I think I agree with what Ronnie says wholeheartedly. We will work on this together. And I understand Ronnie's reluctance in being taxed with having to determine where our school system's gonna be moving forward, but speaking for me personally, I don't wanna maintain it. I want it to be better, because I want our students to be able to perform better in a global environment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go back to what we talked about a while ago. When I first came on the board here, I saw some information from the new county commissioner. On the national average, the states were making a contribution about 45%, and I think I shared that with you. North Carolina at that time was about 54%. They warned us that's going to go south, and I think we see it's headed that way.
Well, and I think for the problem for North Carolina is that you have some counties like Swain and Graham County that are not positioned to be able to help the school systems. And then you have the other extreme like Wake and Durham, which are in a much better position to help their school systems. So you're going to have a huge disparity between rural counties and urban counties in terms of the types of education that their students are able to receive, depending on where they live. And I don't think that's fair for North Carolina, but I agree with you. That's the trend we're seeing.
Thank you, Dr. Ball.
Thank you.
Chris, thank you.
Superintendent, can I approach the board? real
Absolutely. I was just going to comment, Chris, that I feel like I'll be honest with you, I kind of feel like I've been really foggy with the school's numbers and Derek's numbers and how they combine and work together. But that presentation tonight was pretty straightforward, and I appreciate it. I have a lot clearer picture of what's going on now. And I was also going to recognize that your board was here and offer you all the opportunity to speak. So
Thank you.
go
I
ahead.
appreciate it. I guess I'm the emotional one now, if that makes any sense. Dr. Vollin's done an excellent job. I think he's pointed out to you the financial difficulties that we as a school system face every year. And bluntly, Commissioner Beal put his finger on the thing that's happening. I don't think we've seen the worst. It's coming, and you can see it in terms of what's going on. Did we build fund balance, gentlemen? Yes, we did. As Derek went through his figures, it's very obvious that's what we did. But I promise you, it was done on a very conscious effort because we anticipated things coming down. We've used this term about recurring expenses on non-reoccurring funds. That's how a school system operates. We never know what our recurring funds are going to be, ever. Every year we go through based on what the state's going to give us. Every year we have to come to y'all, ask you to make up that difference, fairly or unfairly. That's how it works. So we just simply do not know from year to year what can we afford. And I promise you, we've made some very hard choices. I'm going to see if I get Chris nod. We've had things that we would love to have done. For example, this year for the $200,000, we had a technology facilitator included in our desires. That facilitator would allow us to utilize better for the education of our children, to reach out to our teachers in our classrooms, better how to utilize the technology that's available, but someone needs to show them how to do it. It's that complicated. So that's one of the things we were talking about in terms of the need for the funds. So I guess what I'm coming to you all is, I'm reassured. I've listened tonight. I think this board is sharing in our vision that we don't want just the minimal experience for our students. That has never been our goal. We want the maximum possible we can do. And all facts and figures aside, I'm looking at you. We need this $200,000 to do the things that we feel like we need to do to continue to advance the education of our children to the max. And if I get quoted on anything by the papers or whatever, I do want to say this one final thing. The graph that Chris showed you all about the difference in the funding, and when you look at the ratios about what our teachers have accomplished, when you look at those things in a comparison, that is, of all things that we talked about, is I think one of the most astounding things when you look at our graduation rate You look at the figures on the work keys and base our performance on all aspects of our students. For us to, in my mind, surpass those counties with what we have is a testament to our educators. I think it goes without saying that we're very proud of them. I match them up against anyone in the state, and frankly would just love for someone to come and try to disabuse me of my idea about how good they are from anywhere, be it Orange County where they like to, at Chapel Hill where they like to talk about how great they are. Come on down. I think we'll match up. Our books are open. I've heard sometimes that it is confusing. Chairman Tate and I were having a conversation. He looked at me. I think he's the same way I am. I've been in finance for years. That's my livelihood. I still don't understand it sometimes. It still takes Angie or Chris to come to me and say on the questions, show me where we're going. And then I have to sit and think about it long and hard to understand that. And that's after 9 years of being involved in school finance. It's difficult. But our books are open. I know hopefully I'll see Carl Nada. He had some questions for us recently. Dr. Baldwin, I hope, gave you the information that you felt that would help you. I think he did in terms of that. So anytime y'all have questions about how we do things, ask us. It's no secret. We're not going to hide. We will tell you what we're trying to do and tell you how we got to where we're at. So fund balance is going to go down, gentlemen. It's coming. I'm glad, frankly, if you're looking at me, am I glad that we built it? Yes, I am. Because we had anticipated things like this occurring and going from there. So emotionally, this money we're asking for, we need it. It's going to allow us to do some things that we feel like are necessary for our school system to continue to excel. The facts and figures are good. I know where Derek's coming from. He has to do what his job is, which is to make sure that the county utilizes and spends the funds the best way that they possibly can. And we're doing the same, I promise you. So please consider our request. We need it desperately to continue to do what we're trying to do. And any consideration y'all would give us is most appreciated. Okay? And thank y'all for what y'all do. It's not an easy job. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank y'all. Anything further?
Mr. Chairman.
Sure, come on. Mr. Goldsmith, welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to respectfully touch on one thing, and I do appreciate the two words I heard from Mr. Beal, Mr. Gillespie, about not wanting to maintain. We're not in this school business to maintain. We were maintaining when Russia put Sputnik up there. Then we realized something had to be done. That's why I failed math the next few years. But, so I appreciate y'all mentioning not maintaining. Along that line, the small school bill that Mr. Rowland referred to, that came about, it was initiated by our school board when nobody thought this would be able to get done in Raleigh. We believe it's on the verge of being done in this budget. That was the school board going to Mr. Davis at the time. He got it through the Senate 2 years ago. It died in the House. This time we had Mr. Corbin, Representative Corbin, as you know, is very pro-education, as all of y'all have been. He joined with him, and it looks like it's going to pass. But our motivation to go to them and their motivation to carry it through and fight so hard for it was for the exact purpose you said, not to maintain, to increase the quality of the education for the students in Macon County. And I'd like, you know, we all talked about the teachers, what they're doing. They do a great job. But there's a lot of those doing a great job are veteran teachers. This is their career. They've made a lifetime of this. And it's on their backs that we've been able to be where those statistics show. Some of them are going to be retiring pretty soon. But I go back to that small school bill. Is that was designed, was asked for, and they did it with the purpose not to maintain and to make things better. So my request would be that you'd ignore whatever funding, whether it's going, however those positions are going to be, is ignore that. Don't count that in that budget. because that will hopefully, if we have a budget to maintain here, but we get that shot in the arm, finally something from us, to go in the opposite direction of what we all see from the state is disappointing. But this is a positive thing from the state that was done specifically for the students and teachers of Macon County and nothing else. And that's why I just implore you to, to just put blinders on that. That should be a bonus, just like a fundraiser would have been. Just like when that stadium was built, Mr. Beal got that stadium built for Mr. Shields. It was April, and did all those things, and all that was done. That was just a bonus, made things better. And that's what this bill is designed to do, make things better. So I just appreciate y'all's consideration of that, and that's not be considered as part of maintaining. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Fred. Before we move forward, I'm going to pop on my soapbox for 2 seconds. If you think about society in general and as a whole, there's truly nothing more important and more influential than our teachers are and how they weave our future businessmen, our future leaders, our future workers. They're truly extremely important in society, but yet you look at if you follow the dollars, you look at what maybe some of these athletes are making, they're making literally 20, 50 times more in a single year than what this entire school budget is. Something's really kind of messed up with our society and where we put our priorities, but that's my soapbox for today. Anyway, let's move on. Thank y'all for coming. Any other questions? We're going to move on to fire departments. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, we have two, I think we have 2.5. We've got two, really, requests for tax increases on their fire department budgets. I'm sure all of y'all know this, but I will reiterate it. Our fire departments run off of a separate tax than our general fund does here for the county. So it's two different sort of entities, and every fire department in our county has a varying tax rate based upon a number of needs, from size to number of calls they run to quantity of structures and people they protect. This board has one primary goal, and that's to provide the best life and structure safety that we can for the bottom dollar. And I hope y'all can appreciate that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and bring Franklin up, Franklin Fire Department. Kevin, Mayor, Summer, come on up. I think we had a few questions. I know y'all are asking for it's about my best guess on it's about a 20% tax increase from what you've been going over. If you can just give us a rundown on why you're requesting this. And I know I've been through it with y'all, but let's give the general public and the rest of the commissioners the opportunity to do that and ask questions. Welcome, thank y'all.
Yeah, well, thanks for having thanks for having us, and Chairman and board. For a rundown, why we're asking for the increase is we want them to increase our staffing 24/7 with 2 personnel instead of 1, so we can obviously provide a better service for our customers, and also to start setting aside in our fire department fund to replace our vehicles. They're starting to age out. The maintenance is starting to cost us so much more to keep them running from year to year. So we've got to build that fund up so we can start replacing some of our equipment.
All right. Any questions from the board on this? Summer, do you have any comments?
No, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to be able to come here tonight and speak on behalf of the town. We certainly value our relationship that we've established with the county, and we hope to continue to move forward with that.
Your board's in unanimous support of this, I presume?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good.
And
Mr.
the
Shields, go ahead.
staffing, what does that include?
As of right now, we have 1 personnel 24/7, and we have another firefighter that comes in for 12 hours a day. So we're going to increase that second firefighter an additional 12 hours a day, and we'll have 2 personnel there 24/7 to respond to calls.
What's your fund balance, Chief?
after this year, it's gonna be down to,
It'll drop down to $45,000.
Chief, I know these numbers, I'm just asking for general knowledge, other people
Okay,
in the
that's
room.
fine.
Give us an idea on your call volume and how it's been increasing the past several years, and where you are now.
well, from last year, or I guess 2014-15 to 2015-16, it increased roughly 300 calls in a year. So we went from about 1740 to 2034 in 1 year. And you go back 5 years, it was around 1,200 calls 5 years ago, and we're over 2,000 now a year.
So what is that a day? I was getting ready to break out my calculator.
It's,
It's about a 15% increase from last.
How many calls is that a day?
16.2.
A day?
No, a day, you're roughly 6 to 7 calls a day, somewhere around there, a day.
How many calls? I'll do it. I got it right here.
2034, I guess about 365, I'll tell you.
Yep, 5.57.
Yeah, I got 6 calls.
And you're increasing the manpower at night
Yes, sir.
because
of just volunteers, you know, the lack of volunteers participating. I know the county did a questionnaire sent out, and everybody's hurting when it comes to volunteers. Recruitment, retention, it's hard to get them out of bed in the middle of the night. There's been multiple calls where the single guy at night has responded to medical calls by himself. And for me, that's a safety issue for me. I'd rather have 2 guys respond to every medical call, because you don't know what you're getting into when you go through that doorway. So, but that would be minimum staffing for us, is to run 2 guys 24/7 with this
And-
increase.
from, and this is just my ignorance asking a question.
Sir.
From what I would consider my bedtime at 10 o'clock till when I get up in the morning at 5, I consider that through the middle of the night. So assuming that, is there a large percentage of calls that happen during those hours?
Yes, we, after 9 o'clock at night, we're down to 1 personnel right now, and we're running roughly a little over 500 calls after 9 p.m. throughout the year. So a quarter of our calls are running after 9 o'clock.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What do you gotta replace first, chief? You got a list, a wish list, do you gotta replace a tanker, truck?
Yeah, well, as of right now, we're 1,000 gallons short coming out of the station from our last ISO rating back in 2012, I believe it was. So we really need to replace that truck as soon as we can, but it's going to take a couple of years before we can build the fund up to replace the truck. You're talking about spending plus $300,000, to outfit a truck.
Do you have any debt right now?
Yes.
We do. We have 2 fire truck debt. That's the only debt that the Franklin Fire Department has. We have consolidated those payments into one annual payment of around $76,142, and that will be paid off in the year 2020.
What is the total debt?
The total debt on both of those apparatus, once said and done, will be $1.5 million.
So I presume that's the ladder truck.
And one of the engines, yes.
Yes, sir.
And a what?
One of the engines.
Okay.
When you do an upgrade, in this situation, does your rating change for insurance? Does your customers get a benefit?
Talking about for right now,
Yes,
if we go up to 1 cent,
yes.
well, they'll get the benefit of having 2 personnel show up for every EMS call, every fire call, wreck, whatever it may be.
Do they get benefit back in their insurance?
Not with this increase, they won't. But,
Okay.
as we replace trucks and trucks age out,
Your rating stays the same?
until we have the next rating. When the insurance commission comes in and does another rating for us, we could potentially change that if we can increase it.
Just remind us what your rating is, I don't know.
It's a 3.4 right now, which is very good. Yeah.
That's what now?
It's outstanding, actually. So, yes. And anything under a 6 is not benefiting for the homeowner. It's really businesses that are the ones that are going to reap the benefits from that once you get under a 6.
So whatever rate you're going up here, in turn, they'll get probably some insurance reductions?
No, but we're going to try, you've got to stay ahead of it, and we're not really ahead of it. We're behind the ball right now with having our fund balance to a certain level, we can start replacing these trucks. When you've got, 7 apparatus, and after 25 years, that's the expected life cycle of a fire truck is 25 years. When you got 7 of them, every 3 years, we need to be replacing a truck. And we have to replace one in 5 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. I'm going to reiterate kind of what Gary's alluded to here, and that is that, as I mentioned when I opened up tonight, about we take tax increases extremely serious for obvious reasons. And I guess what he's saying, it's good for us, and it's good for the communities if we can see that with the tax increase is going to provide a benefit, which is potentially in insurance rates going down. So I think that's what he's alluding to make sure that goes there. I'm going to ask you a couple of tougher questions. I know that you have a couple, we mentioned 5, 6, which is outstanding, or 4 or 5? 3, 4, excuse me. Well, you've got a couple areas that are kind of outlined that are in a class 10, and a lot of that's due to distance from the station, I presume. I'm just asking this totally out of the blue. If you don't feel comfortable answering it, you don't have to. Would you consider if another department can provide a lower insurance rating for those areas? Would you consider providing?
I mean, if they could provide that, you're right. And I know some of the areas, and I've looked into those. And one area in particular, the Pony Grove, we've checked with the insurance companies. They're showing up all as 9E ratings. So they're not showing up as a class 10. And so I don't want to change that, so I don't want them to know that. But we've checked with almost every address up there, and as the insurance companies pop up, they're showing up as a class 9.
Right.
They're not showing up as a class 10. And with our tax rate being so low, to give it to somebody else whose tax rate might be 2.5 to 3 times as much, that's not really giving the homeowner a benefit at all by
Absolutely.
increasing their taxes. So
To me, just from a completely logical standpoint, me sitting here as chair of this board, if you have a homeowner with just a simple sign of this board of changing the fire district, could potentially either get a fire tax increase or decrease, and an insurance increase or decrease, and it ends up as a net low for that county resident.
it's better for
Sure,
yeah. Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a taxpayer. I want my insurance as low as possible, or my taxes as low as possible too.
Well, that's good to know, and I appreciate y'all's willingness to, I mean, I'm not saying we are, but it's just good to know that if we ever do get to that point, that y'all work with us if we have to do that.
Absolutely.
Questions, Paul?
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And I didn't visit with you prior to this because, as the chairman alluded to, the fire taxes that you're requesting an increase in only affects the people in the Franklin precinct. And I think Mr. Bill and Mr. Shields represents those constituents. I represent Birmingham, Iowa, and Halen.
Mr. Gillespie.
Pardon? Mr. Gillespie, well, 2 of you guys. That depends on where you live certain times. Just a few things in here. For 4 years I've been on the board, I've advocated for consistency in our fire protection departments. We're all over the board. We're all over. We've got 11 departments. Some people, from your request, I think of $38,000 for fire call assistance. All the way, 3 departments have 0 to pay their firemen when they respond to a call. It's all over the board. In your projections here, or your proposal, I see in there dental, health insurance, and also retirement, paying into a retirement fund and a 401k. Those are good benefits.
Right.
And I'm not being critical because you're requesting that. You're taking care of your members. There's even county employees don't get dental insurance. But none of the other paid employees, and there's no consistency in how we determine where we have paid employees in these other fire departments. It's just every year or two, we'll have 2 or 3 departments come, request, without too much logic, in my opinion. We approve those requests, but we seem to be getting more inconsistent in how we fund fire departments. Total in Macon County is about $3.26 million of taxpayer money goes to local fire departments. And I appreciate you and Summer for your presentation here, very detailed. A couple of things strike me is this is called the Town of Franklin Fire Department. What does the Town of Franklin contribute to the funding of the local of this fire department?
I can go ahead. Well, one thing that you'll note is, I'm sure you'll notice an administrative reimbursement. Part of that of what the town of Franklin does contribute is we offer financial, we keep up with all the fire department's financials, audits. As far as administration, we're there. As far as IT services, we try and provide that within that documentation. Now, in previous years, and this is something we would like to look at moving forward, is there a way for the town to maybe continue to make a contribution to the fire department's current operating expenditures? And that's something we would like to look at, because I do believe the town of Highlands is able to do that. So we would like to see if we could do more on our end as well.
Okay, and I'm not being critical when I'm asking these questions.
Absolutely.
And I know that you're aware of the document that Warren K. prepared about.
Yes.
He's addressed some serious issues
Oh,
that
there
I'm
is some.
talking about here, and I think exist.
Oh, yes.
And this is a 22.47% increase based on my math. I'm not a mathematician, but this is a 20-something% increase in the fire tax to the residents of Franklin. Somebody else's vote, somebody else's responsibility. So that's pretty significant in 1 year.
Yes, sir.
Some of us don't get to vote, by the way.
Pardon?
Some of us in the extra ETJ don't get to vote, we get to pay the tax.
Oh, you're in it,
Oh,
but you're representing District 2.
yeah, but
You-
I'm in the town ETJ.
But you get to vote on this as a commissioner,
Yeah.
whether or not to increase, okay.
Oh, yeah.
And I get to vote on it also, and it doesn't affect me or my direct constituents. I represent all the taxpayers of Macon County, but primarily in remote areas. So this is a good model, I think, for fire departments, absolutely. It's the cream of our 11 departments if this budget request is approved. I wish we could get around the table with Warren's recommendations. And Jimmy alluded to some issues we have in those areas in Macon County. You can't get coverage, you can't get insurance.
Right.
Right. I know.
Those 10s, you can't get insurance. 9s, they don't want to insure you. 8s and 7s is no benefit as far as your lower tax rates. So at some point soon, I think we need to get around the table.
Agreed.
And look, we're up to $3.25 million in fire department fees added to our $49.7 million budget. We're looking at $53 million of taxpayer money in Macon County. We're getting ready to vote on here in a few days, a few weeks. So I appreciate your presentation. Your documentation is sufficient. It's an excellent program for your firemen. It should be approved, but I'd like to see a countywide discussion on how we treat our fire departments and our firemen and our
Absolutely.
volunteers. But thank both of you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Higdon.
Thank y'all.
Thank you very much.
Unless there's
We
any further
appreciate it.
questions, Derek, anybody else?
Sumner, you
Yes, sir.
brought something up, in regards to the towns funding the fire department at some level. What, does municipalities typically, do they do that? Where they have a county fire department, or?
It's
typically-
dependent upon your tax rate. And I know in previous years, the town of Franklin did sustain their current fire department through ad valorem taxes until I believe it was 1999 when the districts were created. And one thing that was actually able to be purchased for that was some of the existing property down at the fire department now.
Well, there's a correction on that if you want to call it. The county started fire districts in
86.
1985. That was the first thing I set up when I came here. At that time, max was $77 a house. You have $1 million house, $77. You have $130,000, $77. That was changed back in the 90s. But in the Franklin district, the ETJ people, the people not in the city limits, have always paid a greater percentage than whatever the city has budgeted. Right now, it's 51% plus the people outside the city pays at $600,000. Back when it was in '85, the percentage was still the same, even when the town funded it. So it's yes and no. County residents fund city fire department. Highlands, same example. The difference is you have 90% of the people don't live in Highlands, so you got vacant properties, which you have to cover. But down here, you actually got more residents that pay taxes and complain more about the fire tax than anywhere else in the county.
And if I may address that, if we could, one thing to note as well, and I believe our fire chief has gotten some statistics of how much it does cost the town of Franklin to try and provide that service out into the county districts. Would you like to go over that a little bit?
Come out like per call. Yeah, I mean, we're running, obviously you can take that 2,000 some calls that we ran last year and divide that by our budget, and we're looking, it's costing about $330 a call, where some of the other departments, as you were saying, they're getting about $1,200 to maybe even $1,500 per call that they go on, that they respond to. For the number that we keep increasing and going up for every year, I think we got to stay ahead of it and, you know, get this 1 cent increase so we can start preparing for those truck replacements that we've got one agent out next year, got have 25 years, and a couple years ago we sold one, hadn't replaced that one yet, so we're kind of just falling behind on that.
And one final thing that I was able to find today was actually the original 1986 agreement when the town of Franklin and the county first kind of established this. So I have copies to pass out as well, just kind of for a little bit of future knowledge of where we've come from.
Where did this document we got was on our desk? Where's that? Is that one? Okay, I appreciate that. And some of the things you alluded to are in here, but I've not really just, but I will take that under
Thank y'all
advisement.
so much. Chief.
Thank you. Certainly appreciate your time. Thank you for all the hard work you do.
Macon County citizens.
They are.
That's right.
Thank you for all your hard work. We appreciate it.
I know all y'all probably know this, but I have been a volunteer fireman. I think I'm in my 18th year now, and we're talking about that $3+ million, Paul. That's probably a drop in the bucket if we didn't have our volunteers to what it would cost to provide fire services for this county. And as far as reimbursing calls, I think at Highlands right now, I think we're getting, if you make 40% of the calls, you get like $1,500 every 6 months. Otherwise, you get like $10 a call.
Highlands?
Highlands, yeah.
I think that's $1,000 is all they got in their fire call budget.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, it's like $1,500 every 6 months, I believe. Warren, do you know offhand? What Highlands pays their firemen, I think it's $1,500 every 4 months, 6 months, if you make 40%. Otherwise, my point on this is that, you know, these volunteers, I personally am a proponent of giving back to them. I understand they're volunteers and you're giving your efforts. Every year, there's more and more training, there's more and more calls, and you got your own gas you got to pay for. You got to go your own every time you switch a light bulb on at 2 a.m. and you're paying for that electricity. So I'm a proponent in reimbursing those.
They're showing
some
1,000
sort,
on the
so.
spreadsheet on the line item. Yeah.
Yeah,
If you had to pay those 300 people at minimum wage, $3 million's a real deal.
good enough. Thank
Well, I'm
y'all.
not saying it's not a good deal, but there's
No, I don't disagree. We need to have some discussion.
some great inconsistencies
Oh, yeah.
in how we use that money.
I agree fully. All right, I think that's it. Burntown, welcome. Chief McCaskill.
Thank you for having us. I think I have some information I'd like to share with you first. This is Mike Schuler. He's our assistant chief, and he is our one person who mans the station during the daylight hours. So he's only on an 8-hour shift, but you have to understand that most of our folks work out of district. When we approached you last to get some money, we asked for about half what it would take to put a person on an 8-hour shift during the day. So since everybody's working out of the district, our goals 4 years ago, though, were to man that station to reduce our response calls. And since most of our volunteers work out of the district, that meant we could get a truck to the scene from that if we had somebody there during the daytime, Carl. They could get the truck to the scene. And me, at that time, I was working up in the old health department building. There were a couple of cases that I drove from there to our station, got a truck, and back to the fire. Now, that's not a good response time. We have done that. That was one of our goals. We wanted to get that equipment and get there quicker. The next thing we want to do is upgrade the main station. We've done some renovations. It was built in 1980 and leaky roof and,
89.
well, in the 80s. And leaky roof and several things, we were able to replace that. We got that done. We got the inside upgraded. You've not been in it. It's a little more suitable. We've got some of those things under control and whatever, so we've done that. We did get our OSFM rating from a 9S to an 8B a little over a year ago. There are some advantages, tax advantages. I think the study that Warren proposed, he had just 3 different agent quotes, and I used some averages in my numbers, but we were able to drop that rating to an 8B, which did help with some insurance companies. Some don't honor it, but some do, and it does mean some considerable savings for folks within that 5-mile district. The other thing we wanted to do was be able to locate some land that was strategically located to cover those areas on Olive Hill and Rose Creek and whatever, where there are homes that are in our 6-mile district that were still a 10, Ronnie, and they were unable to get insurance or not able to get insurance because they were in that district that was no man's land. In 2015, we had a total of 177 calls, which is just a little over twice what we had 5 years earlier. In 2016, we had 251 calls in that district. Now, you've got to understand we're one of the most rural, sparsely populated districts, so our cost per call is a little bit more than some of the other ones, but not as much as a lot of them. Year to date, we've had 86 calls this year. Last year at this time, we'd had 71. So we're up another 15 calls this year, so far this year. We had 1,280 structures in our district according to the study, and it cost about $722 per response. So we're not in the $1,100, $1,200 range. We're somewhere in the middle of those ranges for very rural, so we've managed our money well. The only ones that were lower than that in that study were Clarks Chapel, Cullosage, Franklin, and Highlands, which were densely populated areas compared to Burningtown. A cost per capita on our call, we were $58. Clarks Chapel, Franklin, Highlands, Otto, and West Macon were a little less, and again, those are those densely populated areas. So looking at those, this increase would allow us to do full operation down at our new substation, which is strategically located, brought in the Olive Hill structures. I think we showed there were 126 structures. I ran a few numbers on that. They'll be able to take advantage of the 8B once they get within 5 miles at those folks. They'll save around $8,200, and that's just the average of what the 8B reduced insurance according to our recent study that was done. So it'll pick up the majority of those, with the exception of some on Lower Burningtown and some on Upper Ray Creek. The very far end of that, there's just a few sparse lots right out there that we're still not going to be within 5 miles, but there's no real place we could locate a station anywhere that was going to put those within coverage range. So that picked up most of that. Our other goal with this increase is to lower that 8B down to that 6 to give some advantages. And those advantages, if once we take in those other 126 structures, I just figured the half of them being insured at over $100,000 was $8,200 that they had immediately changed. It'll give us a total of about $81,000 worth of reduction in homeowners insurance when and if we get that down to a 6. And that's just assuming that half of those structures are insured for $100,000 or more.
Repeat that again.
If half of the structures, half of the 1,280 structures in our district are insured at $100,000, and that was all, the other ones had no insurance, our district would save around $81,300 and some odd dollars in insurance, and that's just using an average of Warren's figures from this study that Paul alluded to, this fire protection study. So I use those. If you all have had a chance to read that, it'll give you those numbers. A couple of questions that were asked, and Mr. Tate and I discussed that. We did include in our budget about $5,000 for some part-time help. That'll be 350 to 400 hours a year. That will allow us to provide some weekend coverage in those high brush fire danger weekends where we have 3 or above type fire rating from the Forest Service. We have a lot of brush fires. We are pretty rural. Again, I said there was 136 structures, so I kind of covered that. We currently have 32 members on our roster. That allows us to man this substation. That's what OSFM requires. There were some questions about how do we build a station on property that we do not own. We have a long-term lease that was taken with the Baptist Children's Home Society, It's renewable in 5-year increments for 25 years with 5-year increments after that, and with the option to purchase the property itself after they're able to sell it. The way their property is set up in a trust, they've got about 55 years running before they can actually deed that property to anybody else. We have several institutions right in and around that area that we have had frequent calls to. The Iowa School is close to that, so strategically we've located close to our businesses and the entrance to the community, and that allows someone coming from town to pick up that second truck or that tanker coming in. So the loan is organized through Integra Bank. They gave us a good rate. They were able to fund that structure on that leased property with those terms, and we did have surveys and an attorney do a title search. We paid for that. I checked it out. Everything's kosher. Everything was kosher with the Baptist Children's Home for that. So that's our presentation.
Questions?
How much is your payment,
For the lease on the land,
No, for the building.
it's not exactly set in stone right now, but it's around $2,200 a month when we get it finalized and get a CO on it. Right now, it's running, we're paying interest on it, which is similar.
If this is not approved, can you make your debt?
We can pay the debt, we won't close the doors, but these goals we've set out are gonna be hard to do. It's gonna be hard to provide that insurance advantage to those in that 5-mile district. We have to have a OSFM inspection and get that substation certified. Once we've done that, a couple of things we have done in addition to this is we picked up a truck for a service truck, which is something that's required for OSFM inspections. The other thing we've done, we got a used 4-wheel drive tanker that we purchased from Tanker Pumper that we purchased from Clay County. It's not new by any means. We got a good deal on it, but it is 4-wheel drive, and it allows us to get to some of these rough rural areas that we haven't been able to really get a mainline pumper to. And any of you that have been up in some of these places understand what I'm talking about. In fact, we had a question about that just today.
On your lease costs,
Yes.
when they're able to sell this property, will that cost go towards the purchase?
It's not built into it, but you have to understand what our lease cost is. We've got 2.2 acres. Our first year's cost was $200.
We're getting it for agriculture rates.
It's really at the ag rates that it was used at. It has a small increase, like a 2% increase per year going into that for the first 25 years. So really, even at the end of the 25-year lease, we couldn't pay the interest on what it would have cost us to have bought the property.
$200 per year?
Yeah. And it does have a 2% increase clause in there. In 25 years, we renegotiate that based on what they're getting for ag property, and then we'll go from there.
I may have missed this somewhere. It may not be in my business. What do you use for collateral to make the loan? That's not in my business.
I guess our good name. We asked and they said they would fund it. Collateral will be contents.
It would likely be the lease that they have.
Yeah.
Plus, we put a bunch down.
In other words, we paid for a lot of the building. The building is strategically located also near the airport. There's a gate on the road, it's paved road that goes all the way to the airport runway, basically in the back door of the airport. And so, we have access to that road from our station. So if the airport needs help or we have mutual aid with Franklin or something does occur at the airport, we can get in there fairly easily if we need to.
The substation is operational today.
They're supposed to be coming tomorrow, I hope.
Final inspection.
When you do the volunteers by being in that type of area, and I believe you got Town, then you got, I'm gonna call it a satellite. Can you staff it? I mean, can you,
With volunteers, we do have enough to staff it. We have 32 members currently. We have to have 28, if I'm correct, it's 20 members plus 8 for each substation. So as you add a substation, it requires 8 more, but currently we have enough to do that. We have 4 extra. We
if you fall below that, And your rating changes.
Emergency management puts us on probation and makes us get with it, and we have to go out and recruit hard. Hard. That happens occasionally. I'm not saying it can't happen. Volunteers are hard to recruit, and there's a lot of training required. A lot more reports go in, a lot of stuff going in. I think there one other question was our internet costs were high on our budget. Well, Derek can probably speak to this. We're too far. And I know I talked to Carl about this one time. We're too far from a DSL hookup, so we had to go on satellite. On the phone line, it took us about 6 hours to download the required report to Raleigh. It's that slow. We ended up having to use satellite internet, which is a good bit more expensive at our main station.
Is that huge satellite?
It is used.
Okay.
I think they're all merged into one anymore anyway. I think they're all, they just got a different name, but it,
And we are scheduled next spring with all the state fire marshals to lower our insurance rating to 7 or 6. They were supposed to do it this year, but they could not get to the state.
put it off twice, hadn't they, one? Last spring, then they put it off to fall, and now they put it off to spring, so.
So this increase will be offset by a decrease in home insurance.
Yeah, it will decrease, provided we get that inspection. We do have the equipment necessary, but getting all that equipment operational and whatever, and getting all the water points and everything certified again and repictured and pre-plans and those things done, you have to get that lower inspection. Well, we have 30,000, but we've got about 15,000 of that committed, so we're down to 15,000. Now, you got to understand, we're in the same boat Franklin is. We're going to be in the situation of replacing trucks in a few years too, because of age or refurbishment, and you know, that is an option to get them recertified by UL and get them refurbished, and so some of this older equipment, but it's pretty tight. Few unexpected expenses on the substation have used some of that. For instance, we lost an alternator during a pump test last night on a truck. It's going to cost right at $1,000 to put an alternator back on a fire truck. So, it doesn't take, you know, I just told him the other day, I said, you know, when you start writing a check for $1,000 to pay for a repair for that, or you have to put 2 tires on the front because they're over 5 years old and have to be replaced. Doesn't matter that they're not worn out. 5 years from manufacture date, they have to be replaced on a fire truck.
Ken, it looks like you'll have a 9-member board.
Yes.
I'm presuming they were in unanimous support of this request.
Board approved the request unanimously.
I see one had not enough.
We had one member that was not present and due to illness and has not been to several meetings, the last several meetings, but the rest of the board was unanimous.
Kenneth, is there any advantage to the airport other than obviously the fire station being close to it? Is there any financial advantages to the Macon County Airport having that substation placed where it's at?
Well, we're exploring that with some of the powers that be, but until we get that substation up and certified, we hadn't crossed that bridge. We do have a community member who has quite a bit of experience dealing with those folks, and he's going to help us look into that and how it will benefit the airport.
I would think the airport would be very interested in having that conversation.
Well, once we get this station up and operational, we're going to try to schedule and meet with the board and see. Would it? I don't know what their insurance rates are, so.
You got a 9-arm from there. You think, we've had that conversation, you think.
The substation we built, and there has been some talk about it. Why do you build such a station and why is it built like it is? It's designed, and Ronnie, you were there at the groundbreaking, you looked at the plans when we went over them before. It is designed where it can be added onto in future years, not without, you know, not destroy the whole building, start over basically thing. You know, we looked at some metal buildings, average lifespan 20, 25 years. It would be a metal building. You needed to add onto it. You got to do a whole lot of modification to add on to it, and you know, the building we're in currently is a metal building, and we've had to do some extensive repairs to it simply because of the age.
And the metal building was quite a bit more expensive than stick built at the time.
prices of metal at the time.
Roll call.
Yeah, and that's my district, so I'll ask you some questions. And I think Jimmy sent you a list of questions on May the 25th. There's about 14 questions, and I've not been privileged to your response. Did you respond to those in writing, or?
Paul, we went over most of those questions whenever he had lunch with me as liaison to the fire department, so I just kind of wanted to give him a heads up of what type of questions would be asked of this.
Okay.
What we're looking for, so he has not publicly answered them, no, now he's, answered them at lunch with me, so.
I think some of the ones were in my presentation, were covered in the presentation, like how many different structures were gonna be pulled in from the 5 to 6 mile district, whatever, but ask away.
What is the total cost of this project from start to finish?
Well, we hadn't got a grand total yet because there's still a few incidentals. We had to go back and cost us a little more because we ended up having to pave all of the driveway. That was the county's behest. We had gravelled it. They told us when they inspected it we had to gravel the driveway, so we did it. That wasn't good enough. We had to go back and pave it. They were closing down the asphalt plants. We did get $25,000 from the state to cover part of that cost, so it ran over what our anticipated budget was. About $54,000. It cost us around $60 to do it in concrete, but it has six-inch concrete with wire reinforcing in it. So that's done. So we do have a few cost overruns. We're running right at $550,000 total. Well, everything. There's a little bit over 7,000 square feet in that structure.
Is that just on the one level, or is that counting that?
The one level is 70 by 70, so you end up with that, but then we have over half of that structure, there's another half that amount, which is storage.
Okay, and if this project's over $500,000, are the fire departments bound with the same bidding standards?
Some would be, for example, the town of Franklin or the town of Highlands would be, but these are private, nonprofit corporations, and they are not.
Okay.
We did put it out, and we got several quotes on structure from 3 or 4 different builders. One of them did give us a lower bid, but then they're out of business, so that didn't help us. They weren't going to be able to build a structure anyway. The metal building was higher. It was $680,000. The stick-built building was the best thing. The loan we borrowed is only $320,000. We had been setting aside money for several years trying to locate a suitable piece of property and area to locate this. So our loan is not but $320,000. So we paid and used grant money to cover quite a bit of the expense. Like, again, we've also had some community members that have donated a lot of work to that building.
And you're planning to hoping to get your CO. What does it hold up on the CO?
The last time they were there, they told us we needed to have it landscaped with bushes and mulch and
Grass
stuff.
and mulch.
Grass had to be coming up, and now that it is.
Well, we seeded and mulched the whole thing down last fall when we were having brush fires everywhere, and you probably drove by there and saw that. And of course, it didn't burn, but I really would rather not put straw and stuff around the building it under construction when it was so dry.
Me and Jimmy sow grass every day.
But,
are there any legal issues with the contract or anything now?
Not that we're aware of. We're just trying to get it finished.
What was the purpose of this design? When you look at a standard substation throughout western North Carolina, I'm familiar mostly with Cashers, but you look at a metal building with 2 or 3 bays. This thing has an elaborate facade, glass doors, sleeping. Does it have sleeping quarters in it?
No,
But
it's
it
got
has-
storage upstairs.
It has what?
It has some storage upstairs. It is designed where later on it could be if we had to have a manned station. But there would have to be a lot of work done.
It's pretty elaborate design for the substation.
Well, it's designed to build on. At one time, it was one of the proposals was metal on the bay area, and then the meeting room and that section, quarters for the kitchen and meeting room and whatever. But it was designed in order, as the population grows, and you can tell by our number of calls, it's really grown. You know, we're double the calls we had 4 years ago. But we We're gonna be required to have more equipment as the population grows to cover more areas, so it was designed where we could add two. It's designed as a drive-through, and I think if you go to some down in the central part of the state, I know are designed that way to have drive-through doors where you can line the trucks up nose to tail, all hit the road together. So it was designed that way, and it's just a change of being a stick-built building from a metal building. And like Mike said, the bid came back on the stick-built building less, and Ronnie, you looked at those bids with us one time. It was less than the metal building was.
He bid the metal? That's
No, he didn't bid it.
I
He-
don't bid that.
No.
He-
Your plans to fund this thing, to pay for it, what were those discussions prior to actually constructing it? I mean, did you know that you would have to present or come to the board with a tax increase request to fund this project?
We're not going to have to request funds from this board to fund this project, but to make this thing fully operational and to get all of the benefits out of this project for our community members. To get the OSFM rating, we're going to have training hours. We're going to have pre-plans done on all of the structures over 3,200 square feet now? 3,800 square feet? It's 3,800 square feet, I believe. Isn't that what you said, Jim? Yeah. So we have to do pre-plans and notebooks and things, so there's a lot of work and training that goes into getting the other things. We're not going to close the doors if you don't give us this funding. We will still operate, but we're not going to be able to operate at the level that's going to benefit the community for lowered insurance ratings and those benefits of responding quicker and adequate training for the volunteers and retention. There's some other things that go into the fire department other than the building. We could have the most elaborate building. We have a great boardroom with oak paneling and everything, but if we didn't have the people and the funds to operate it, it wouldn't be much use.
And this, what will this do to the fire tax rate in Burningtown, Iowa? Did y'all look at that?
Well, it's
Right now, we're at 0.86.
It's going to take it a little over 0.1, 1.2, something like that. It won't be as much as some of the other departments are funded.
It's 10.46 cents.
10.46.
Will be the new rate.
And that has to do with the value of what's the tax valuation in that area and then the collection rate. It
Collection rate,
kind of
right.
pulls it back down, so
Yeah.
it's really hard to figure that because that changes from year to year.
Yeah, it's between the 10.46 and 10.49 will be the new millage rate for the residents of Burningtown, Iowa. That's a 21% increase over the current fire tax rate. That's a pretty big hit one year, 21%. Same as Franklin's is 22%. That's, to me, is a pretty big request. I'm not saying it's not worthy, but when we hodgepodge the approach of funding fire departments and raising taxes for fire departments, it seems that we get further apart from having a level playing field for all fire departments. Tax rates for residents. We've got to get around the table. I keep harping this for 4 years and got nowhere. Because, we got to sit down and seriously look at this thing. I can't vote for a 20% increase. I can't vote for Franklin. I can't vote for a 20% increase in 1 year to fund anything. That's a major hit. So I appreciate the service. I was involved in the fire department. We moved it from the airport to Yonts Creek in 1988, 1989. At that time, we didn't have to think about substations. We were just. That's why we've got the reversion clause down there. It's just we didn't have stations then.
Well, we didn't plan on a 41% increase in the number of calls last year either. But when you fund those calls, and that's part of where we are today, is our calls have gone up so much from 177 calls in 2015 to 251, and then again the number we've had this year is still going up. It's not like it's going away. More calls take more money and more fuel.
Can I ask you a question, if I don't interrupt Paul, but if you don't have whatever the board decides, and it is, and you agree, it is a large increase at one lick. If, let's say the board decides that not to fund all that at one time, are you saying that is you'd have to have all this at one time. You know, I know the calls are up, and that's the best argument you have. That's to service the people of that community. That's the reason you're there.
Right.
So, and Mike Schuler does a wonderful job. I know that for a fact. I've been working in that community. It's amazing how many calls you do get. I mean, it surprised me. So, anyway, but what is, what I'm just flat out, are there any fluff in the request that you got? I mean, are there any, do you have any place can this board consider, do you have to have exactly what you requested to do what you want to do, is what I'm asking?
We can do most of what we want to do. Mike started a community program where we have, and for lack of a better term, we call them frequent flyers, but we have elderly people in the community that have health problems, live alone, or maybe a couple that has problems. He tries to get by and visit them periodically, see if they need anything, help them with something. That's something Mike started on his own to kind of help out the community and be seen. He wrote a grant with OSFM for smoke detectors, the 10-year type smoke detectors. So when we encounter a home or situation, a call, we have a couple like that. We also have forms at the station they can fill out, and we have a couple of trained members that actually go in and install those smoke detectors. So we've started some programs that we may not be able to continue. There's not a whole lot of fluff in there. You can say we don't need to man the station on weekends during high fire danger. You can knock the part-time out if you want to. You know, you can just tell me where you want it cut, what you don't want us to do, and that's what we'll do.
I apologize. I corrected the chairman on the fire call payment to Highland, just $35,000 versus $1,000. I noticed your request is your fire call assistances or payments is $14,000, whereby Cowie's is $0. So there's a great inconsistency. Those are things we need to be working to get into one. I don't think, Mike, do you have dental or health insurance?
No, sir. All of that's VA.
You look at the salaries of the paid firemen in every fire department, some pretty good discrepancies there. So I'm not saying let's stop the fire business. Let's get around the table and get some consistency in this thing. I mean,
Well, and I think
payments are important for people to come out. $10. What's yours? $10?
it's 7 for members and 10 for the officers. But the officers don't get call pay for tonight or going to pick up this and do reports and meet with Warren and bring radios in and out,
Well, that ain't
whatever, so it sets it up.
$7, you know, I mean,
But it's not a whole lot, and I think you're gonna see some discrepancy. I think some of these other departments have fire call payments. They may call them something else. However, every department is not on exactly the same accounting program, and so to get
That's exactly right.
so to get things to come out with the county budget, there's some things, you know, you have to put in there. Where do I put food when I have a fire call? You know, there's nothing in there for food, but when I got folks out there 6, 7, 8, 10 hours on a brush fire, I got to feed them. So I'm not saying it's a bad program, it's that way, and we're going to try to set up our accounting system that way. We're trying to change that over with a new treasurer in July, but we just, you know, we got things that just don't fit that program.
So those things we need to work on.
Take a look at
that consistency.
Take a look at the IRS 990 and see how that fits with a volunteer fire department. If you want to try to have a nightmare filling something out. Somebody's shaking her head. She knows what I'm talking about, don't you?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, guys. Paul, to address a little more about what you're saying there, and I think every one of us in here are on the same page with you. I think where Warren is headed with his study and getting some thoughts together on where we might go is something that's going to be definitely on our agenda this coming year as we're moving forward. So.
And since we're bringing that up for discussion, how do we advance that? I think
we got to get through our budget, and then I think we can find the
Make it a
time to
top
sit down.
priority?
Yeah, make it a top priority and start talking about it.
We need to do it because this is a stimulus year. When we're asking for 22%, 21%, 22% increases,
Sure.
I think that's the catalyst we need to force us around the table to do this planning.
No, but I mean, since I've been on here, I don't think I've gone through a year where we didn't have some fire department asking for a tax increase of some sort. So, and it'll be 1 or 2, 3 more next year. So, and I don't disagree with your theory at all. So.
Is this
Hold us to that, Warren.
Can I say something?
Sure, absolutely, Warren.
I want to expand on something you said when we first started. You were talking about the departments that are here today, and those of us that seem to always be at the meeting. Education, we talked about that a little earlier, and it's very important that we make sure our children are educated. We have people that are going to take our places one day up here, and my place, and these folks here. The sheriff's still here, and then between he and I, and these folks over here, we're about a 27% part of your budget. It's very important that public safety is a top priority for you all. That's one of the most important decisions that you're ever going to make sitting behind that desk right there. It's important for folks like those kids that we're trying to educate. We've got to keep them safe while we're educating. We've also got to keep them safe on the way back and forth to school. We've got to keep them safe at home. So I don't want to ever underestimate or ever lessen the importance of public safety for anybody. I don't, a lot of times I may not stand up and I may not be as emphatic as I probably should be, but I want this board to understand, and I want the public to understand. The reason we come to these meetings, the reason that we're here is the importance that we place as agency heads on keeping the kids safe, the parents safe, the grandmothers safe, the people that are passing through Macon County going to see the kids graduate from high school in Jackson County. The folks that are, the whole gamut of folks that we have to protect on a daily basis. So I just want to make sure that we emphasize that to the public, and that's why we're here. That's why we're here talking to you tonight, a lot of other nights, about funding issues. If you have any questions or anything else that I can help you with, I'll be glad to answer those.
I have one question.
Sure. Motion. Okay. We'll stand in recess for 10 minutes.
Whatever it takes to get my dad.
10 minutes. We'll call the meeting back to order, and I'm going to take a little executive privilege, and I'm going to reverse just because the library's here, and we'll move y'all to next in line, so come on. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I know most of you. I'm Louis Jordan, and I'm the chair of the library board, and really just want to say thank you for what you all have done for us over the years, and we want that to continue. I would like to digress, if I could, for a minute, and just say that I appreciate what Warren and the fire departments are doing, and just as a personal testimony, my insurance went down $700 a year. I live in the Calisaja area, and it was because the fire department was changed certifications and improved. And truthfully, I am more than happy to give back some of that in a tax increase if that's what it takes, if we can make all the fire departments better, because that is important, and I saw it firsthand. So I just wanted to say that.
You're saying your insurance went down a lot more than, Calisaja hasn't had a fire tax increase in a long time now.
Right.
It would probably have been a lot more greater than that.
It would have been, yeah.
What the tax increase would have.
And you don't have to wait for a tax increase to give that money back. You can make a donation.
Okay, actually, we do support the fire. We do support Calisaja Fire Department in all they do. I really want to just make you all aware of some of the things that we're doing and some of the challenges we face. And I come from Atlanta, and we have a different level of wages and all, but I was appalled when I got to the library and found that 13 of our people are making less than $10.50 an hour. I'm sorry, less than $11 an hour. They're making $10.50 or $10 an hour. That's hard to live on. I personally could not live on that, even if I changed the way I live. And in our budget, we are asking to be able to give them a 50-cent increase. Now, for a full-time person, that's $1,000 a year. That's not a lot of money. And I know you all have all kinds of things, and I've been sitting here listening to where you've got to spend your money. But if nothing else, the money that we are asking for, some of it is going towards that salary increase of 50 cents. We have aging computers, and you all did graciously give us a one-time, non-recurring amount to purchase some computers that are used for the folks that come into the library. But our computers that we use every day, the staff uses, some of them are 8 years old. Imagine what it's like to use a computer that's that old and to maintain it. And so our technology demands are there. Just as a school, listening to Dr. Baldwin, really, I could almost say amen to everything he was saying their needs are, because we are part of the education of this county. We actually are the de facto library for Macon Early College and for the community college. They don't have a library. We are that library. And our uses go up. We haven't had an increase from you all in 4 years. This will be the 5th year if we are not successful in getting an increase. But the cost of services has gone up. Health insurance has gone up. And there may be ways that we can better use our dollars, and we look at that every day. We ask a lot of our people, but we're at a critical point where we actually lost one of our librarians to another county, and we want to keep the quality there because the kids come in. We had someone come up to us just this evening and say that their kids enjoyed the program, that they came to the library. So you all have seen our budget requests, and I'm really just going to say, please look at what we are asking. We aren't asking for a large increase. We're asking to try and improve some of the things that we're doing, and especially those that are so underpaid, because they're dedicated to what they're doing. And we don't have school teachers that are making $10 an hour, thank goodness. But these folks are teaching the kids when they are on our property at the library and all. And you all have, again, been very generous in many areas, and we have a library system. We, though, the last thing I will say is that we also are faced with the same challenges that some of the fire departments are faced with. We've got the Nantahala Library. It's not cost effective to have that library, but I will tell you that I will fight to keep it open because it's there for the school. And they already feel like they don't get the police protection, the fire protection, and all that. And we could do a better job. We're in a modular trailer out there. If you haven't been out there, I'd invite you to come see us sometime out there. That modular trailer is about 20 years old. It leaks. The carpets are ragged. It's in bad shape, but the kids still come to it and use it. And we have computers there that they come and use. So technology is going to continue to increase, and that's where our expenses are just rising. E-books, that sort of thing, are all going up. And without an increase, we aren't quite sure how we're going to maintain the same level of service. We'll still be there, but the level of service may not be there. But I thank you, and again, I don't want to belabor it, and I appreciate Derek has done a great job in his research and all, and I think understands our our needs, but he's got a budget to balance, and so we decided to come to you all and say, let's help us at least help these folks make a little more money.
Just a quick question. I don't disagree with you on the pay scale there, but what are the benefits, like at the library?
We have benefits for our full-time people, no benefits for our part-time people.
So these people in that pay scale,
We have full-timers that are making $10 and
so they're getting
$10.50.
full benefits on top of that? is
They
my
are,
point.
yes,
Okay.
yes, that
And
is.
Is that a full range? Is that
It
health, dental,
is health.
eye, everything? or
It is a very good health care benefit, and it's partly why we've been able to keep a $10.50
Sure.
person
Now,
there.
it's
I mean,
expensive now.
because it's about $8,000 a year for each employee. I think the county's paying $7,000, something like that. We're kind of the ugly stepchild, though, because we fall under the Fontana Regional Library. And so Jackson County is under that same health care as is Swain County and all. So we've looked at how can we decouple that, and we're going to continue to see if there's ways to reduce that.
Oh,
But
I'm not suggesting one way or the other by any means.
Yeah.
I was just curious based
Yeah.
upon what you were saying.
No, and that is a reason we keep some of our employees.
Okay.
Couple questions.
Mhm.
You mentioned Nantahala, the library in Nantahala, and the kids using it. Isn't there a library in the Nantahala school, or is that the library for the Nantahala school?
Ooh.
There is a
li-
media center
a
in
me-
the school.
Yeah.
It closes, though, at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
and
So
visit
there is
and stuff.
okay.
Yeah, there is.
And in regard, you mentioned the roofs leaking on the building. Who owns that? Is that a county
That's
building?
county.
And have we addressed the leaking roof at the library at Nantahala?
We,
It takes us 10 years to fix a leaking roof.
We have
Huh?
been
It takes us
submitting
10
for-
years to fix one. You'd mentioned Nantahala always feeling like they're getting the short stick, and they do.
Right.
Last year, I think we appropriated two $40,000 allotments for community centers in the Franklin area for upgrades. I think realistically, and Nantahala doesn't ask, they're kind of,
Right.
the improvements that Jack and Warren might have been in on the lake over there, the buoys and stuff for the beach there behind Lake's End. But at some point, we have to look at this. I mean, it's not that we need to do something for Nantahala, but they do get ignored.
They do.
We've not invested anything, community center, any central location in Nantahala. That may be something we need to discuss, is how do we do that? How do we give them some of their tax dollars back
right.
in the forms of advanced services? So it's a good
They
point.
should have
you're-
seen the art room, huh?
It looks a little bit better now. We've done some nice work on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You mentioned,
But it does leak.
part of this increase is for increase of personnel pay. Of the $999,390 in the budget, what percentage of that budget goes for personnel pay?
The personnel pay is,
Or what percentage?
the percentage
Or if that's something you
is,
need to get back with-
I might,
It's 80%.
is it
73 was
Seven-
salary.
73?
73%.
How much?
73.
73% goes for salaries, and that includes benefit?
That's correct.
No.
No,
It doesn't. It's about 80.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
80 was benefit.
80% of
80.
the total budget goes for salaries and benefits.
Conservatively.
Yeah, that's about right.
Thank you.
And the total investment in the library is around 1.3 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, make sure I understand, we're talking about 80% of 1.3, not, or we're talking 80% of the 999,000.
80% of 999.
No, right.
Thank you.
And we gave them a raise 2 years ago, 1 year, last year.
Well,
We didn't get an increase from the county, but we
We-
were able to give some additional money to staff by making other cuts.
Yeah.
As Lenny mentioned, though, this will be the 5th year without an increase, a recurring increase from the fund.
Yeah.
There was money for technology, that was a lot.
Right. And the technology continues to go up, I guess, as we all know. I mean,
How many full-time, part-time employees are there?
we have, and I'm going to ask Karen to give me those numbers real quick.
We've got,
15.
we've got 22 full-time equivalents, 22 full-time equivalents.
Equivalents, but he was asking how many full-time and part-time, and
Okay.
I think there are 13.
I have 15 full-time.
15?
15.
And how many part-time?
Well, 15, I think it's 14 or 15.
14?
Yeah.
Counting the active.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
part-time people get benefits too, or is it
No.
just the full-time?
Just
No
full-time.
benefits?
14
But
part-time.
not all of them make $10 an hour either. I'm not correcting any, but not all of them make $10.
How many part-time again?
14.
14.
Some of
15
them-
full.
Some of them make much more. Some of them make much less.
Which averages out.
The average, I think, is $10, right?
We have 21 of 30 employees that make less than $12 an hour.
Shoot me that again, Lynn.
21 of 29 employees that make less than $12 an hour.
Most of those are the it was when I left, was the part-time.
Yeah, there are some full-timers that are in the 1050 and 1150 range.
I think they were 6 when I left, out of 14, I don't know, 15, I don't know how many.
Yeah. 1, 2.
That are making 10 less.
Less than 12.
Less than $12.
Yeah, we've got 1, 2,
Less than 10, less than 12.
Less than 12.
less than 12, 3, 4.
6, 7, 8, 9.
I thought we
10.
raised it, moved it to
No, I think
10.
there are 10 of them.
10.
10 of them that are making less.
10. Like
Who are
10.
making 1050 or 1050. That's our lowest salary.
Yeah.
Is at 1050.
Yeah.
Of the
10
15.
of the 29 and 1050.
No.
There are 10 at 1050.
Well,
10 of the 15 are making 1050 or less, of the 15 full-time?
No,
That's
no, of the-
overall, 10
of the
overall,
full-time.
regardless of full-time and part-time.
Okay.
We don't
Okay.
actually
I'm with you.
vary salaries based on full-time, part-time. It's for the position that they hold. Doesn't really matter if they're working part-time or full-time, that position has a salary. And so it doesn't matter if they're part-time or full-time, our salaries are the same. In terms of benefits, we offer full health insurance benefits, which includes vision, dental, and major medical, beginning at 30 hours. Between 20 and 30 hours, they have to be enrolled in the retirement system, state employees' retirement system by law. So that's a benefit that we have to match the retirement. And of course, the retirement rate did go up this year. We also offer paid leave if they're working 20 hours or more. So there's kind of a scalable benefits package, but the full benefit package only comes at 30 hours or more. We generally don't have many people who work less than 40. We want to get the bang for the buck. If we're going to go for the full benefits, we want them working 40 hours a week.
Is that,
Carl, 8 of the 15 are less than $12 an hour.
is that a package through the Fontana Library?
Correct.
It
It's
is.
not just Macon County, but that's.
Correct.
No, right. And that is one of our challenges. We're a small employer, under 50, and over 50, you have to provide benefits. Under 50, we wouldn't. But on the other hand, at these pay rates, we wouldn't have a soul working at the library if we didn't have benefits.
If they're making $12 an hour, for full benefits, that equals up to about $18.90 an hour. In the real world, that's what that's for. That's what I'm having
Right.
to pay, my people. The full benefits, they're making $18.90 an hour if they have to write a check,
If-
what they're getting.
Right.
They're making $18.90 an hour, not $10.
Right.
We'll note that there are several employees who are eligible for that insurance who opt not to take it, which saves us some good money. They're either ex-military or they have spouses who provide it for them. So we're fortunate enough to save some money on insurance for eligible positions that we don't actually provide insurance for.
Chairman's Library, have they been able to amass the fund balance through the years?
Our Fontana Regional Library does have a fund balance that we use for matching grants, for instance. Things like buying our space grant where we have our portable planetarium that requires a 25% match. So our fund balance is used for those kinds of things.
Do you know how much that is at the moment?
I do not. Don't have that figure with me.
We can get that.
Talk about what Mr. Higdon brought up there. So I was in Nantahala the other night, and a person came up and talked to me and wanted to, about the library there, the community library. And, but you're saying that it has leaks and those type of things, is that right? But why is that not being attended to? I guess is what I'm saying. Is it because we don't know, or?
No, we submit work order requests as is the maintenance procedures.
And it's taking care of leaks?
No.
The inside ever get took care of?
No.
No. And again, I think, you know, in Nantahala, unfortunately, even when it comes to maintenance, is, I don't know.
Somebody else there knows every day what we do.
Well, it took us 12 years to fix a leak on the Highland School, so don't.
Oh,
don't get in a
okay.
hurry.
Oh, okay.
The building is, you know,
It's-
it's an
it's an
aging
old-
modular building. It's
yeah.
almost 20 years old. It's got, you know, it's got some
Yeah.
leaks. It's got some separation between the wall and the floor. It's, you know.
When years past, we almost had property to build a library. We had high hopes,
Yeah.
almost, and then that went away, and
Someday.
someday we'll have property, and that's the problem in Nantahala.
Yeah.
I think there's still aspirations to build a library in Nantahala.
There is.
If you can find somewhere to put one, that you can get water and get it passed with the state and get a septic system. But we had a great place, and then that, poof. So,
All the more reason to maintain what we have.
Karen, would you send me a copy of that work order?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Sure.
Do we have I believe this person brought up, a mildew situation there in that building?
A what?
Mildew?
Not in this one, I hope
I don't-
not. We didn't want it.
I don't think we have mildew.
Well, you know, anytime you've got leaks, you've got some mildew that potential growing in the ceiling tiles and those kinds of things. But to my knowledge, there's not a large mildew problem. I mean,
There's not.
you know.
Okay.
The other building, no time, 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're at Nantahala, there are two modular buildings there. They were both installed by Macon Program for Progress, and they were used for Head Start and early Head Start. One is now vacant and has received little or no maintenance, and we're hopeful that the building that we occupy doesn't deteriorate to that condition. So.
Be worthy to acknowledge Teresa Bryant that worked
Indeed.
at that hospital full-time, succumbed to cancer, as did her husband. They were dear
Yes.
friends and
Yeah.
cousins of mine,
Yeah.
but a great woman.
Yeah.
I worked with Teresa for almost 25 years.
Hard to replace.
Yes. Yeah. We do have 2 new employees out there now, and both part-time. So indeed, that was an opportunity for us to save money by not having that position full-time. So we created 2 part-time, and thus we're able to save a little bit of money on benefits. So we try to do that, you know, to reevaluate whenever we have staffing changes to try to minimize our costs. Those are things that we've done that have allowed us to maintain a level of service over the last 5 years without having an increase and still deliver that service by doing things like that.
So last year you closed the library early during the month of January.
We shortened our hours to closing at 7 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock at the main library, and those were the hours that we cut back.
But in.
How long was
no.
that? For how long did you do that?
Oh, we still
It's still-
operate like that.
To save money.
Yes.
And how much did that save you? $13,000 something, you said?
Yeah, what we did, we supplement some of our part-time positions with extra hours so that when people are on vacation or they're sick or they're out doing other programs in the community, we still have adequate coverage.
You want to continue cutting that hour back all through summer?
Yes. Yeah, we don't have any plans at the current time to add hours anymore.
You're not adding hours, I mean, to go back to where you was
Right.
originally?
No.
How many hours is the library open a day?
Which library?
The main one?
Main
The
library.
Macon?
Macon Library.
Yeah.
We are
Which is-
open 56 hours a week.
56?
56 hours a week.
Yeah.
But in addition, we're open at, those numbers down for us. We're open 30 hours a week at the Nantahala Library, and we're open, let's say, about 40 hours at the Hudson Library in Highlands.
Does that include Sunday? I know sometimes.
No, we
No.
have no regular operating hours on Sunday. We do special programs sometimes on Sundays.
So that's 126 hours a week you're open. I'm just trying to
Actually,
understand.
122, I'm sorry, I was a little high on Hudson.
Okay.
So the
So-
main library's open 56 hours a week, Hudson Library's open 36 hours a week, Nantahala's open 30 for a total of
So if
122.
you, it's 122 hours a week. How many does it take to run the library?
Well, at Nantahala, we often operate with one person, which is
Okay, one
not the
at Nantahala.
safest way to operate, but that's how
How
we
many
do.
at Macon?
At Macon, we can operate and sometimes do with 3 if we are, those are kind of margin hours, so from 9 to 10. With Highlands, we never have less than 2, often 3.
Okay.
Remember too that we go out into the community to perform service within the community in addition to the hours that we staff operating our physical plants.
So that's at 100, if we got 122 total open hours and it takes 6 people, that's 732 hours a week. And at 29 people, we got 1,160 hours of payroll, assuming everybody works every week, or does everybody not work every week?
Everybody works every week. We stagger hours. During peak hours, we have usually more like 10 people in the main library, 10 to 15. It just depends what's going on. I would invite you to come by the library during the summer while we're experiencing our heaviest level of activity. And you can see that we can possibly operate with 3 people at that time. So it really depends on we operate under, studying our door counts to see what the traffic level is, what other programs and events that we have going on. So the hours that we staff always would have 3 people at the main library, but mostly have more than that. So it just depends what we're doing, what service that we're trying to offer. And again, I can only emphasize that it is not just within the library building that we offer service.
Let me ask one question. I'm gonna call it your outreach program.
Yes.
What does that cost you? Or you got any idea?
We're doing some more data analysis to analyze just that question. We've really increased how much we're going out into the community, and so we're trying to have a better handle on costs involved in that.
And if you didn't have the outreach program, you could focus more back on the Macon, the library there, the media area. If you didn't have the outreach, when did you start your outreach program?
Well, we've always done some outreach. We have the Reading Rover Bookmobile that serves childcare centers. Historically, we've done some book deliveries and bookmobile service. So we're always reshaping what we're doing to be relevant to the community, and if we see the need is in the community rather than at the library, that's where we're going.
Excuse me, are you overlapping with the schools?
We supplement and enhance, I'd say, what they do and what they can offer. So they don't have a portable planetarium. We do. We go to the school to provide that program in conjunction with what they're teaching and the STEM-related activities that they're offering. we enhance what their students can then experience.
Summer reading, we have.
Summer reading when school isn't in session, yeah. And so we go to the school to promote that so that people
Right.
are aware of what's going on.
Does the school do a summer reading program?
I know that they have some summer reading, particularly for students who, perhaps need to improve their skills. But I know they change them from year to year, so I'm not really sure what they have. They do have the, summer day camps, during the summer, sometimes at the schools, or the summer, feeding, hunger programs, and we usually, participate in those as well.
Karen, your salary comes completely out of the funding from Macon County Library, does your funding come from all three, your salary?
My funding is, some of you may know that I'm the Fontana Regional Library Director as well as the Macon County Librarian, and half my salary is paid by Macon County and half by the state. Through state funds, yes.
What
through
is your
state
salary?
funds. My salary currently is,
I can tell you that. Got that number.
78,000, I believe,
Total,
total,
With benefits.
with benefits,
plus benefits.
yeah.
So are you a state employee?
No, I'm a Fontana Regional Library employee.
But it's
We're a
just
local
half-
government.
Just half funded by.
Right. We receive state funds as a qualified regional library system. With the state of North Carolina, you have to qualify to receive state aid, and Fontana Regional Library is qualified to receive state aid, so we
Does
receive
the
an
county pay half the
allocation.
benefits too?
It does, yes. Everything is split, for me, is split half.
Half and half.
Exactly right.
You mentioned traffic count. How do you do traffic count?
We have a door counter that counts people, well, at the Hudson Library in Highlands and the Macon Library here, the main library, we have a traffic counter, so it's a laser counter. So it breaks a beam, and that's how we count. So it's, it's, I wouldn't want to bet my life on it.
It's plus
but-
or minus.
Yeah. At Mannahala, we simply do a
Yeah.
visual count.
And then the bookmobile, is that a regional or a local?
It's a regional activity, so we receive funding from Region 8 Partnership for Children, the Smart Start, to fund services to child care centers. So our service is targeted at preschool children and their caregivers. So half of that service is funded through Region A, and the rest is funded either through county funds, funds from our Friends of the Library, grants, begging,
I've been around a long time.
Yeah, it's a wonderful service, and that's an excellent example of, in childcare centers, often transportation, it's very difficult or almost impossible to bus children to the library. So that's a situation in which we see a need, we go to the childcare centers to deliver the service there because their transportation methods to get children to the library is just not feasible. So outreach through our services is the way that we can bring services to those children and their caregivers.
Any further questions?
Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laney.
Thanks, Ed.
And thanks to the rest of our board as well.
Thank you,
Kathy
rest
Tinsley
of
has
your
a-
board.
Thank you. Right.
Used to this.
In
back
case.
row.
Rightfully so.
Thank you, the Baptist row back there in the back. That's right.
Thank you, thank you.
Let's roll.
Thank you.
All right, next item is the Health Department. Jim Bruckner's traveling today, and as liaison to that department, I'll give you what the Board of Health voted unanimously on last month is, at our meeting, was they would like for this board to consider the addition of an additional maintenance worker, and that maintenance worker's primary responsibility would be for, Derek, help me here, infectious disease control.
I think it's cleaning the, I think he had mentioned, cleaning the exam rooms.
What is that?
Clinical areas.
It's evidently As it was explained to me, it's a lot more than just mopping the floor and wiping the counters down and taking the trash out. There's a lot more to it than that, and they're like wanting to, yeah, they're wanting somebody that can specialize in that. And we talked about subcontractors and firms that might do that specifically, and I think they came back and they would prefer to keep it in-house. Let that person do other duties as well. So.
Is it possible that the existing folks that's doing the cleaning be trained to do that?
I asked that, and I think the existing folks, Derek help me here, I think the existing folks that are doing it are county maintenance staff and not people that are actually hired by the health department, is that correct?
Yeah, they're county employees.
But they can't be trained?
My understanding is that, no, number one being is I think that person potentially revolves that comes in. Don't tell me out, Derek.
No, we have two full-time custodial workers at the Health and DSS building, at the Health and Human Services building. I think there's two.
Are they assigned there full-time?
Yes.
What about the Macon County Animal Control Center? I was with Jimmy Miller.
Yes, he's the director.
He's the director. He mentioned the other day that they really need some help.
I think that's what they're looking for this other person to help do, is clean that facility as well.
And you know that's a problem, that many animals in there trying to keep things going and clean.
We had actually reviewed that in our budget discussions, and we had spoken about this cleaning person as well. And this is, again, it's not my meeting with the health board, it's my meeting with the department head throughout budget discussions, and went back through the job descriptions. And actually at the animal shelter, it's in the job description of the animal shelter attendant as well as the animal control officers to clean the facility and kind of the upkeep of the animal shelter facility. So that's why I was kind of curious to see that again in the paper. These are all things that Jim and myself had spoke about during budget discussions, but
I don't think it's a good venue for the remaining board members to find out reading the Franklin Press. We look to you for guidance on the budget.
That's
And
what
Brian, you did a good
I
job,
did
but
it.
that's not how I want to find out.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know it either.
Maybe that's my fault, I'm the liaison, I haven't made y'all aware yet.
No, that's
No.
big.
I don't think it's
It's
your
part of
fault.
the budget process.
So,
Making a case in the paper.
no, well, they made it through the last Board of Health meeting. Ryan was there to report, but they had this, Derek, correct me again if I'm wrong, they'd had this in their initial budget, and then after meetings with Jim, these items were not added in the budget.
And it was a prioritization thing. They'd also requested a processing assistant to help with meet the growing human resource needs that accompanies the health department being under the Office of State Personnel. And as we were going through our budget discussions, and Lori, jump in if I'm missing something. I mean, that to me was relayed as a priority over the
cleaning.
the cleaning.
Because that question was asked, which
yeah.
is your priority?
So that was that we asked that question in terms of what was the top priority, and got a different answer than we
Yeah, the
we
Board
see
of Health
here.
came back with the sanitation person.
Right.
Brian, we ought to be asking you, I sat through that meeting just like you did.
He took
I
notes.
slept if you, that's right, he took notes.
Is this
That's
a
right.
one person that's dedicated just to clean this one area?
The clinic rooms and assistance with the animal.
It says
center.
patient rooms.
Well, I
And
can
they're
understand that.
lab.
And they already
In
have two
Auburn,
full-time
we-
maintenance workers assigned
Been here a
there.
long time, and the health department's been here a long time. It's been cleaned, there's never been a problem. It's been cleaned by I know one fellow retired, he was there for
George
years and
Jenkins.
years. That's right. George was there for years and years, it's never been a problem. I don't know if the demand is that high. I look at the numbers going in and out the door, it's been pretty consistent over the past 3 years. If there's some kind of, more infectious disease, they gotta, spray more diesel or whatever they gotta clean with, I don't know. Why the problem all at once? That's what I don't understand.
And I can't give the history on it, but I know they felt it was very important. And we got into a very long, pointed discussion at me of why the health board even exists, why they're there, other than being palms, where their importance comes from.
Who cleans the
It was a pretty
jail?
intense meeting.
Who brought that up?
You have somebody special clean the jail?
Yeah, detention officers. Unfortunately. They do a great job, might add.
And you've got the most thorough clientele in the world, right?
We're taking that under advisement, I guess, Mr. Chair.
But I still think, just for looking at what they'd written,
I haven't
nurses,
seen the article, so.
yeah, nurses cleaning the lab rooms and stuff like that, I'm not sure that's a good use of their time. If nurses are having to do this, kind of going from nurse to a custodial thing, when they could be doing nurse things for the people. I think it's out of character that they'd be called upon to be do janitorial work when their occupation is to be a nurse and take care of.
That's a good point, Gary, if they're doing that full time, but, I mean, did they, I don't understand.
What was the
I
total
don't know.
monies that we requested to do?
30,000.
That's
It's
recurring.
28,000, yeah, for recurring.
30,000.
Their original, I'm probably just speak.
Go ahead.
They originally wanted to use contracted services in their original request to us. It was like 30.
I'm sorry, Lindsay, I can't hear you.
They wanted to use contracted services. They weren't looking for a county employee to be budgeted for that position.
And it,
That changed for some reason, I don't remember why though.
and if I could just interject, and I want to say first and foremost that I think that our custodial folks do a great job. They do, we have top-notch, very clean facilities. I mean, like Ronnie's out here working tonight and to keep this facility clean. So, I think they do a great job, and I don't want it to appear like that's what was being, So, I'd like to thank them first and foremost. And secondly, I think they're kind of, when you get into a situation when we have a maintenance department such as we do that maintains our county buildings and upkeeps them, and then, you go in to the health department and let them contract out with someone to do cleaning or janitorial services, then, I feel like from a management standpoint and looking at the organization as a whole, now the sheriff, his detention officers, he's running more inmates now than he's ever thought we would run. And so who's to then say that the sheriff comes and we're subcontracting out again? Now we have operational expenses that we're putting towards our maintenance staff, as well as spending additional operating expenses on contracting out. And I think that kind of, it kind of goes to take away from the purpose of having that custodial staff. So I think that's why it moved away from the contracted thing to the to that specific request, or from the contracted request to the county employee request.
Right.
I just saw it in here talk about nurses handling tasks that should fall under janitorial. That was just, thought that was a little odd.
Give us a follow-up on that, Ryan, next time.
All right, any other things?
I can take care of it.
Any on budget discussions for you, Richard, sorry.
Usually, and I'll just, before we have the budget hearing on June 13th, which it's scheduled for, this is kind of the work session where we
we look at some things, and with June 13th coming up on Tuesday, you know, we've heard some requests tonight, and historically, the board has kind of given me, Lori and myself and staff Lindsay, some guidance kind of on where to head with any needed budget revisions. And so if we could maybe discuss those, if that'd be the pleasure of the board, or and kind of get whatever we can ironed out as best we could.
How quick do you need that, right?
Just 4, 6 o'clock on Tuesday.
What y'all doing Monday? Yeah, I need to digest some of that.
We can always, I mean,
Or,
We can-
we're gonna recess the 13th till the 20th, right, to actually adopt it? Is
yeah,
that
we can
still the
always
plan?
we can always move that,
I mean,
the hearing. and-
even at the 13th, we could discuss it.
Do we have a
Make
long
changes.
agenda?
We can discuss it and make changes on the 13th.
Yes.
Up until the time.
Up until the time of
Right.
adoption, so
But
I
yeah,
don't
just
think we need a
Do
special
you know, do
meeting.
we have a long agenda on the 13th? Because we get into this discussion, it could end up in a
Yeah,
long,
that's true.
long discussion. Do we have a long agenda?
We have a few things, yes, sir.
Are they all important?
I've got a long laundry list on the June 13th.
Ms. Hall
agenda.
has quite a few things for
But
you.
they're easy.
On Tuesday.
They're easy things, but there's a lot of,
Just say yes.
yes. They're simple though, just.
But
Well,
that would just be
well,
talking.
let's go back to Paul's idea, if it would help. Do we need another,
Try to meet Monday.
I don't think we have any choice except to meet again and discuss
on Monday?
how we feel about the fire departments, how we feel about
In the schools?
schools, health department, library, all of it.
Today is,
Today's the 8th.
Tuesday.
so that would be Monday the 12th, is that?
Yes.
It's up to you.
I think that would just,
What time we
Keep it
talking
short.
about?
if we could do it at 6 or 5, you know,
5 o'clock.
it could be, if anybody else has any, if that's what we're gonna limit it to, what we've heard tonight, we're still gonna hear from Mr. Leitner too.
Yes.
Huh?
He's on for, just his reappointment of tax administrator.
Yeah, the last things we
We're
have
gonna do
left
that?
tonight are quick.
These should, I mean,
I'll tell the board, just kind of while you look at that, I will be sending out a resolution, that was passed last night in Grimm County and Clay County, and, about, we hope we'll know something more from the legislature by tonight, by in the morning at 3 o'clock, about, mental health funding, and so they will, they'll possibly, and I'll email that resolution to you to review before Tuesday, if, and ask this board to review it for possible passing on the 13th. So I've discussed it with Representative Corbin and Senator Davis, and so.
So the 13th was our scheduled budget hearing.
Yeah, and it still will be.
It still will
Yeah,
be.
that's not gonna change.
This would just be a workshop to fine tune what would be presented at the budget.
Prior to the 13th. So that leaves us
Monday.
Leave Monday.
tomorrow night, or
Now, the only thing Monday is that broadband discussion at the library.
But it starts at 3:30.
It's at 3:30, so that leaves, if you want to do it at 5 or 6.
6 is good
It's up
with
to
me.
you.
Okay.
6 Monday.
And I think we can make the broadband.
good with 6, Phil.
Yeah, 6
Steve's got the
Monday.
fathers to come. Derek, your schedule?
Yeah.
This is it. I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm
good.
good.
6 o'clock Monday? You good with that, Carl?
Yes, sir. Whatever's good with you,
Hate
sir.
to take you away from the job, but,
I'm good.
What are we to be thinking about? I've heard this 21% increase and 20%. Is this something, do I have enough information here to, without muddying up with somebody, to come here with a certain degree of information, or do I just
I
wait till
encourage
we
you to
come
get
here?
with Mr. I encourage you to get with
Just
Mr.
call
Tate.
me or we can have lunch or something if you have any questions.
Okay, Now, that's your fire department, or is that the health department?
Fire department or health department.
And, cause I hate, okay, I get it.
Yeah, I'm around all weekend too. So.
Brother Derek, I beat on him too.
I don't mind at all. That's good. So Monday at 6 p.m. All right. Richard, sorry, thanks for your patience and your wait.
I think you have a memo from me dated a few weeks back or a week back. This is my 4th year, so by general statutes, the board has to appoint a tax administrator, tax supervisor, whatever it's called in the county. At this time, so my appointment finishes July 1, and usually we take care of it in March, but you know, it's hectic in March and April, so I'm here tonight. I trust that you read some brief things that our office has accomplished. One thing, I don't know if it's in there, but we jumped from 48th to 38th in our collection rate this year, meaning last audited year. And right now we're ahead of last year, so we soon will increase that up to higher in the state. And I talked to David Baker, Ronnie knows, and I think some of you do. He runs the Department of Revenue, and he's going to work for the County Commission Association. And he said that basically the ones above us, he don't know how they're accounting a 99 plus collection rate, because it's about physically impossible to do it unless you, what you count and don't count. So I'm saying that to say that our staff downstairs has really gone after some of these delinquencies in the last couple of years, and we are going to re-emphasize that in our billings this coming year, because we would hope that everyone pay and have a 100% collection rate, but that's not the case. And some of the funding problems you have are only going to get more intense if we don't keep the collection rate up high. Because when they ask for 1,000, well, you can put it in the budget, but we got to make certain that 1,000 gets collected. And like I said, the girls downstairs have worked diligently on that. The next thing is reassessment, and that comes up in 19. So we are in the process of working on that, and this is the most critical year. Between now and October of 2018, we do 80% of the work, and then we send notices again. And right on the tail of that, in that memo, you'll see that we are going to be forced to finally evaluate and upgrade our softwares that runs the tax offices. They're 40 years old. Our vendor is getting past retirement age, so it's basically how we're gonna service it and keep it going. And that's gonna be, you know, I hate to talk about funding at this level, but it will be $1.5 million project. And that's on any way you go. So there's a lot of big things coming up. This is my 32nd year, and you know, I think I'm still not retirement age, so if it's pleasure of the board, I'd like to still be here. That's all I have.
Make a motion to reappoint.
I'd certainly be glad to make a motion. We've
Second.
gotten from one of
Motion
the
and a
top
second. Any
tax
further
rate
discussion?
ones in the state.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Well, I'll try to do my best, board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard, have you got
Appreciate
more?
your
Have you got more ornery in that 32 years?
Yes.
More mature, educated.
I'll ask a little dealer woman about that.
Richard, thank you.
Thanks, Richard. All right, we have 3 budget amendments.
Yeah, these are just for the health department. These are grant funds. The state will cut off funds as of end of May, so these are just going through June.
Should be able to have them all in one motion.
Yeah, no county money involved.
Got a motion?
Motion
Commissioner
approved.
Dignan.
Second.
Got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
North Carolina Weatherization Assistance Program, Amendment 1.
This is for our housing department. At the beginning of the year, we received 171,000 roughly, but due to delays at the Department of Weatherization, et cetera, unfortunately, we're gonna have to deobligate some funds this year. So this just amends our contract down to 105,683. So we just need a motion.
Take a motion to amend the
Approval of that.
contract. Got a motion?
Second.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, if y'all have, before we recess, I guess if y'all have, just be thinking about any other questions y'all might have that you want to discuss on Monday.
Okay.
Seems like we're down to education. The two fire departments are completely separate, but for our budget, it's education, health department, and library. Was there any other questions? Any other things we need to be considering? Everybody happy with everything else?
SCC, we got
No? Okay, well, let's bring them up so we can talk about them. I don't want to get to our meeting on the 13th and be ready to not know where we're headed, so.
County manager's done a lot of hard work on this budget, and I appreciate that, and I'm not undermining him in any way when I make this comment. I do have some concerns about the funding in the budget for broadband.
Okay.
And I would ask that everyone look at that and give that some further consideration.
Okay. Mike, do you mind taking some notes on these items so we can make sure we got them, broadband, health,
Expand on that,
library,
Mr. Mitchell,
education?
what you'd like to, what you'd like to see there, so we'll.
Well, I'd like to see enough funding in there where I'm certainly not advocating an additional county employee, but I do think that we need to look at a consultant that could help organize this effort. I would also like to see funds available to do some pilot projects throughout the county, not in a specific area, so that this board could get a taste of potentially what we would be getting into. But, you know, that's the.
I think, just my recollection, there's 50,000, is that?
Right, that's right.
Is that correct?
That's what.
Okay. All right, is there any other topics we need to be considering, Mr. Shields?
We've got to meet with Dr. Thomas.
Okay, the SCC thing that was mentioned earlier tonight?
Yeah, that's something
Okay.
that we need to slide in here.
And then we have the burn
Make sure I
building.
understand
We have the
that.
barn building.
Mike, burn building.
Do we want, I want to mention the burn building, if you want to bring that in this budget. And I just understand about the Dr. Thomas, is he talking about a shortfall in this fiscal year?
Yes. 2,000.
I've not seen any
He
information
has, Derek had,
that
$2,000 for this fiscal year, or?
Yes.
Yeah, to end the year, they're saying they're gonna be about 2,000 short.
and I haven't seen information at
How,
this.
how much big of a budget?
280
$280,000
that we give them, 280, 463, they say they're gonna be about 2,000 short.
out of Macon County's portion. And they have the lowest student enrollment in how many years in Macon County? Lots.
Maybe 1,000 per liaison, they can make it up.
Whatever, $2,000. Okay, Derek can handle it.
but I think there's a conversation that we've requested for Dr. Thomas and Derek to have, to get some information to justify this request.
Yeah, back to the burn building. Mr. Chairman, or
That's something we need to discuss.
Mr. Manager, where are we at on the burn building? And the last time we met, best of my recollection, we asked that if there's any changes to be made, or if there's any increases that's gonna be made in the cost of that building. We talked about relocating the building.
We put it on hold.
We're supposed to try to get grant money, right?
Yeah, and the grants money is going through.
It's not gonna happen.
To fruition, so.
So we're back to square
Back
one.
to square one.
We know what monies they have.
So like I said, not.
And the
not gonna
college
happen
has
period.
been
It's a grant.
reviewed, other facilities. The college has gone back and looked at their needs. And, try to determine, to put associated costs with those needs. One of the things that, and I think I can speak for Dr. Thomas and say this, one of the concerns, and you are very familiar with this, that they have is the increase in cost of construction that we're currently experiencing. And they're concerned about, when they look at those numbers and the time period those numbers would derive and where we're at today, it's caused a lot of concern, and they're going back and looking at that.
Do they know when they'll have them?
Well, it's kind of been on the back burner, waiting to see if we were gonna get any.
Now that we know that that's down the road.
Then I think that we would want to advise them of that and ask them to get that done in a timely fashion, if that's the pleasure of this board.
Is that something that the board we would just leave outside the budget and take strictly out of fund balance? Leave outside the
Yes.
budget as a one-time expenditure?
I'll be,
Is that what we're looking at?
I would think so.
would that be part of our CIP plan?
It'd be nice
That'd
to
be,
be.
but that'd be too far down the road.
That's the problem, that it
Time
really
wise.
is too far down the road.
The money will be available that Southwestern has once the CIP is done, assuming it gets done within 10 years, it'll still be there. But the problem is the cost of construction continually goes up, and so the facility is shrinking every day. I'm not implying we ought to do something outside
That's
that
gonna use a lot of
CIP.
lumber, but the cost of lumber is up 18%.
But it's not
Across the board.
masonry, is masonry?
Masonry's, concrete's up,
Yeah.
masonry's up, electrical's up, everything.
What did they say, 6-7% is what they figuring per year?
We've got those engineering costs. Ever since Canada imposed the embargo, you know, it's just, everything's gone crazy. It's just, you can't bid, you can't, if you got anything out there like we all have, it's just crazy. You can't bid nothing. It's just,
Getting back to your point, I think that if it be up to you, but to, have the county manager reach out to Dr. Thomas and, say we're ready to
Follow that there?
move forward, because I think the ball's kind of in their court.
have time to, now that we know what we're doing, this, because the longer you wait, I'm forever.
And I know they have been looking at that process and understanding that as every day goes by, the facilities get smaller, because there's a set amount of money there.
Absolutely.
All right.
Motion to
Recess until June 12th at 6 p.m. right here at 5 West Main Street in the Commissioners Boardroom.